So this past Thursday, Nintendo decided to hold a Nintendo Direct partner showcase, and to be completely honest, I'm kind of beating myself up a little bit that I didn't get up early for it and record a live reaction because they announced Pac-Man World 2 Repack. I've been waiting for this. I'm sure I've talked about it in plenty other videos on this channel how much that I've wanted this game. Pac-Man World 2 is my childhood. I played it on the GameCube. It was also available on like the original Xbox and like PS2. But I played the GameCube version, and yeah, it's in like my top 20, 25 favorite games of all time. I adore 3D platformers, as you may or may not already know, if this Astrobot shirt wasn't already enough of a dead giveaway. And yeah, I love Pac Man as a character. I love the arcade games. So I'm just so excited to see that that game is coming back. But there was other stuff announced during this presentation, too, which we will get into. I won't necessarily touch on every single game because there were some games in that presentation that just didn't do it for me. You know, like that campfire building simulator game. There's probably a target audience for that. I'm sure there's a demographic of people that are probably really into it. But watching that, I was like, this is probably the most boring game I've ever seen, in my personal opinion. Nothing going for it that would appeal to me. Now, if you're into that, no hate, not trying to shame you. There's probably games I play that you might think are boring. But yeah, it's like gather firewood and arrange the sticks in a certain way. Make sure the wood is dry. It's rainy season, so you'll have to. And I'm just like, I don't care about this. But then again, you look at a game like, was it Power Wash Simulator that like was very very successful and got crossover promotions with like SpongeBob and Shrek and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be Game of the Year 2025. But for me, nah, I don't think they could have made that game look less interesting for me personally if they had tried. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about Pac-Man. We're going to talk about the new Katamari game, which I'm very excited for. Namco really coming in clutch this presentation. They had a lot of good stuff. I think that Dragon Ball game is also by Namco, right? Was it Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? We might talk a little bit about that. I don't know if I have a lot to say. And then, you know, a day later, THQ comes out and shows a new trailer for this SpongeBob game that's coming out, I believe, in November of this year. So the fall season starting to look pretty stacked. You know, I know what I'm going to be playing in September and November, because September is when the Pac-Man remake comes out. But yeah, I'm excited for it, and I'm kind of surprised that they didn't put the SpongeBob trailer in the Nintendo presentation. I think that would have, for me personally, anyway, unironically, just that double whammy of Pac-Man and SpongeBob would have probably would have bumped that presentation up to like a 9 out of 10 for me. As it was, Pac-Man World 2 goes a long ways, so that's like already an 8 out of 10 presentation for me just having that. I know there's a lot of people who were underwhelmed by the partner showcase. Wanted a lot more notable third-party games, like heavy-hitting, like AAA titles, like Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever that was nominated for Game of the Year. Was it last year or the year before? Whenever it was, that's a big game that people are kind of like waiting on, and just other games of that caliber, like Resident Evil, all the remakes, Resident Evil 2 remake, 3 remake, 4 remake. I guess they did one of the first one. I don't know. I don't really play Resident Evil, but I know the most recent one was the 4 remake with, was it Leon Kennedy? Is that his name? But no word on that. I'm sure those games are coming eventually, because Capcom has had a very close relationship with Nintendo during the Switch era. Even before that, like during the Wii U days, when nobody was supporting Nintendo, they let them use the rights to Mega Man to put him in Smash Brothers. And now that there's hardware that's capable of running it, I'm sure those games are coming. The mainline Monster Hunter games probably coming, like Wilds. Maybe they'll go back and do World. I don't know. And then what else is something that other people have been waiting on? Metal Gear. They just came out with that remake. I think is it out? Maybe it's not out yet. The Twin Snakes remake. Which I don't really play Metal Gear Solid, but it looks really good. I could see that probably coming to Switch eventually. But I can understand why some people would be underwhelmed that there wasn't more, especially now that you've got the Switch 2 out and it's a significant power upgrade from the Switch 1. A lot of the games that were shown in the presentation do feel like games that could run at least okay on the regular Switch. Nothing like groundbreaking, like, whoa, this is a huge leap for like Nintendo fans if you've never owned a PS5 or a Xbox Series X or whatever. To experience this big graphical leap that you never had before on a handheld, except for maybe the Steam Deck. But as I understand it, the Switch 2 is even more powerful than the Steam Deck. Um, but yeah, so on that front, I can see why people would be disappointed. But I think it's interesting how everybody kind of has different tastes, because I didn't really hear very many people who were disappointed with the Switch 2 April Direct, like the big blowout showcase where they announced Donkey Kong Bonanza and they gave us the title drop and everything for Mario Kart World, which was teased previously when they did the whole like Switch 2 reveal trailer. And then they gave us some third-party stuff like Final Fantasy VII remake, and then several other notable games like Elden Ring. A lot of people came away from that presentation really, really excited. But as somebody who doesn't really play a lot of like gritty, like M-rated games and plays a lot more, family-friendly, wholesome, colorful platformers and that sort of thing, I came away from that one being kind of disappointed. So it's kind of funny how that works, I guess. Just different audiences, different demographics. So a lot of people were upset with this most recent one, but I personally enjoyed it. And yeah. I guess that's enough rambling, so let's just get into talking about Pac-Man World 2, which, again, I played this game on the GameCube, loved it. I think it came out in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. And it's kind of wild to think about. Pac-Man, the original arcade Pac-Man, came out in 1980. So 1980 to 2002, that's like 22 years. That's pretty much the exact same distance from the release of Pac-Man World 2 to now. That game is maybe 23 years old at this point because Pac-Man's celebrating his 45th anniversary this year. So that just really puts things into perspective. It's so wild that the time between Pac-Man World 2 on the GameCube to the remake is the exact same amount of time. Pac-Man World 2 is as old now as the arcade game was when Pac-Man World 2 came out. It's almost perfectly even, and I just think that's kind of mind-blowing. It makes me feel old. But yeah, Pac-Man World 2 is a 3D platformer, probably, I guess you would say maybe a little bit closer to a game like Crash Bandicoot versus the Mario side of things. If you were going to compare it to a 3D Mario game, it'd probably be a little bit closer to Mario 3D Land or 3D World or something, and not something like Spyro the Dragon, by which I mean it's more of a linear 3D platformer where you are kind of going from point A to point B. A lot of the levels do have some openness to them somewhat, and there's a bunch of secrets to uncover, but it's not like a full-blown sandbox collectathon platformer like Mario 64 or again Crash Bandicoot, or sorry, Spyro the Dragon or Banjo-Kazooie or anything like that. But I think there's a place for both types of games, I think for what it is, I think Pac-Man World 2 is great. I think it would get kind of tiring if every 3D platformer was like a big open sandbox adventure, so I like having variety. But yeah, this is a game where the remake, I kind of had to rewatch the trailer a few different times. There's kind of two trailers. There was the Nintendo Direct presentation footage that was maybe 50 seconds or a minute of gameplay while the Nintendo Direct narrator is talking over it. And then separately, Namco uploaded their own trailer that's a couple minutes long that has their own different narrator, and it's completely different footage and stuff. And when I first watched it, it was there was a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there. Hopefully I'm using that term correctly, where it was a little jarring because I was like, well, this doesn't feel extremely familiar to me because I played this game a lot. It's been years, but it wasn't the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy or like Spiral Reignited or SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, where I was just immediately like, oh, it looks just like how I remember it, which is very interesting. It wasn't really until I paused it, going back through the footage and looked and like, oh yeah, this is this level, this is that level, because they've done a lot here, not just visually, but just to really. This feels a lot, and they say in the presentation that this was made from the ground up. Um, so I guess they didn't just build it off of the original game's engine or whatever. But this does feel much more like a remake versus a remaster. Not just because the graphics are completely redone, but they seem to be making a lot of changes, and I'm warming up to it. At first, I was like, I don't know. I kind of just, the purist in me kind of just wants that preservation of just the original traditional experience, because they changed up some of the boss fights and things like that. Um, but but yeah, I guess we'll just go straight into talking about that. That was one of the most memorable parts of the original game for me was the bosses, because you would fight like in each world you would fight one of the different colored ghosts. You had like Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde. From the original arcade game. You got the red one, the orange one, the pink one, and the blue one. And but in this game, they're in these like giant robot mechs. So it's kind of weird because the first one you fight is the orange ghost, and you fight him. He's in this like giant frog mech that jumps around, and it like extends its tongue, and then you have to like hit its throat while its mouth is open. So it's kind of more unique. But then the other bosses, the other three ghosts, are all in the same mech, but it just like has different, a different attack pattern, different moves. Like one of them, when you fight Inky in like it's kind of this like dark forest world. It's like a wooden ghost robot that sends out like saw blades that you have to dodge. But then once you get into the ice world, at the end of it, you fight Pinky, the pink ghost, and she attacks from a robot that's it's made of metal instead of being wooden, and it shoots out like snowballs, and it's kind of more dangerous because it'll like freeze you and leave you vulnerable to get like knocked off the stage, and have to redo the whole fight. And then once you get to Clyde, which is the red one, they kind of up the ante some more, and he's shooting like fireballs at you, and the stage is catching on fire. You're battling him in this volcano. But all three of those bosses, it's the same exact looking ghost mech, pretty much. It's like more or less like they copied and pasted it. So the first one was unique, where the orange ghost, he was in a frog, but the rest are all just kind of like basic ghosts. But those were my favorite boss fights, though, the ghosts that kind of felt copied and pasted. I really enjoyed those boss fights. But in retrospect, I do see how, like, well, it is kind of strange. Only one of them was in an animal mech, and it kind of makes you think, like, well, maybe the developers ran out of dev time or something. They were really crunching to get the game done. So maybe they were originally planning for each of the mechs to be like a different animal that corresponds with that area. Because, that first world is kind of like a swamp. And so you fight, you would kind of expect a frog to be in a swamp, so that boss fight makes sense. So for this remake, they've gone back and they've redone the other bosses seemingly, because they showed Inky, the blue ghost, and instead of just being in a ghost-shaped mech, the ghosts are practicing a little bit more humility, because instead of the robot being made in his likeness, now it resembles an owl. And I don't know how that's going to change up the actual fight. I hope it still functions the same way, because it was kind of neat, because the bosses all had like two different ways you could take them down. Pac-Man has this move called the Rev Roll, where he can charge up in place, and he's like, and then you let go of the button, and he goes, pew, and he launches off really fast like a ball. And you can go off ramps and get some decent air with it. It's pretty similar to Sonic Spin Dash, basically. So you could do that into the mechs and cause damage that way. Or Pac-Man has this other move called a butt bounce, which is basically a ground pound. And you could get on top of the ghost robots, and you could slam down, and you could break the glass dome that was protecting the ghost inside. So it was cool how you had like two different methods. The game didn't really force you to do one certain way. You could kind of pick whichever one you wanted. Up until the fourth and final ghost that you fight, then they kind of force you to have to do the butt bounce on top, because that method is a little harder. But yeah, I don't know if you'll have the same liberty in this one because when he's in the owl mech, it doesn't have that glass dome on top anymore. So I don't know. Are you still going to be able to butt bounce on top? Do you just hit Inky directly and damage him that way? And there's not actually something protecting him. There's something nice about that tactile feel of like when you would hit that glass dome, it would gradually like crack. Like you were breaking into it. So I don't know if that'll be quite as satisfying now, even if you can still butt bounce on him from above. If you've never played the game, this is all like, who cares? What is he talking about? Why does any of this matter? But for the real ones who actually played this game, for the OG fans of Pac-Man World 2, you'll understand why this is important. But speaking of different ways of defeating enemies, though, it looks like Pac-Man is going to have a more versatile moveset in this game. By the way, just real quick, just so we can kind of wrap up talking about bosses, we've not seen the other two ghosts, so we don't really know. But I'm going to assume that they will have like some sort of animal theme for their mechs, because like I said, the frog, it makes sense for the first world because it's a swamp. The second world being like a giant hoot owl boss. The second world is like a dark forest, so that makes sense. Owls are nocturnal, and you're going to find them in a forest. And then for world 3, it's snow. So I'm kind of not sure what the mech might look like for the snow world, because you can think about like different snow animals, like a polar bear or a walrus. But the thing is, all three of those boss fights that used to just be a big ghost mech, it flies around. So it's got to be some kind of flying animal. So it's like, what's a flying animal that's like native to like the Arctic? I don't know. There's like, penguins can't fly. So I don't know what they're going to come up with. Maybe they're not all going to be animals. Maybe it'll be a snowman boss or something. I don't know, a giant mechanical snowman, or maybe it'll be a polar bear or something. But they just give it rockets and it's just a flying polar bear for some reason. I don't know. And then like the fourth world is like a volcano, and there's not really any animals native to a volcano that I know of. So I don't know what they do for that one, but it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, moving on to Pac-Man's moveset in this game. So he's got his rev roll and his butt bounce that I already talked about, which were his two moves in the original. But he also has this ability where they're bringing this back from Pac-Man World 1, the first game, it seems, which is where he can take the Pac dots that he gathers and he can throw them as a projectile. And it seems like it's more or less the same. It seems like they kind of just copied and pasted the coding from the first one. So function-wise, it'll probably serve the same purpose. I kind of worry about the extra moves because I don't want it to make the game feel too easy. Because that's something I kind of liked about Pac-Man World 2 was, kind of the challenge of it. There's some pretty tricky platforming and stuff. But at the same time, I do know, like they show in the trailer for the remake, one particular instance where Pac-Man is using the Pac Dot to attack this like giant bear enemy. And that bear is really annoying to fight because it's in like the very first world of the game. So it's toward the start, which is supposed to be kind of the easiest world. And it's on this circular platform that's not that huge. There's not a lot of maneuverability to get around this bear. And you have to do Pac-Man's charge up move and let go and hit into him 3 times on this very small platform. And when you charge forward and let go, again, it's like Sonic Spin Dash. You hit the enemy, and then you kind of bounce back with a decent amount of momentum. So you've got to do that 3 times and not fall off this relatively small platform you're on. And it takes a second to charge up that move, too, so that bear can just, start dealing damage to you while you're even just trying to charge up and do it. So that part's a little weird to have in, like, maybe the second level of the game. It's, like, very early on. So I can see it making situations like that a little bit less frustrating. But again, I hope overall it won't make the game too easy. Especially the biggest thing that kind of concerns me is they're bringing back, I don't know what they call this move, but it's basically Yoshi's Flutter Jump. That was not in the original Pac-Man World 2 or in Pac-Man World 1. But for the remake of the first one, for Pac-Man World Repack, they added this move that, it was like Yoshi's Flutter Jump. He would kind of kick his legs and, so you jump and then you can kind of get another second or two of airtime to kind of like plan out where you're going to land and kind of course correct if you kind of misjump a little bit, to save your save your save your skin or whatever. which maybe I shouldn't be concerned because I was worried about that in the remake of the first Pac-Man World game. But I actually enjoyed that move quite a bit. And I wouldn't say that it made the game too easy because, if anything, it encouraged me to make riskier jumps because it's like, oh, I bet if I use this move, I bet I can make it like I can skip this platform and get it this, almost like a speed run way, that maybe wasn't necessarily intended. So I think that kind of evens it out. I don't necessarily use it to play the game regularly, but I would use it to like, oh well, can I do a shortcut? It's kind of a risk versus reward thing. Like I think I can get over here and bypass this one part if I do it like this. So in that way, I thought it kind of added to the experience. Um, but I should say though that Pac-Man World, the original, I didn't have that much experience with it before I played the remake. Pac-Man World 2 is the one that I grew up with. It's the one that I loved. Pac-Man World 1, I had played a little bit of it, but I didn't get it till like years later, and I only kind of dabbled in like the first world a little bit. So until the remake, I had never beaten that game from beginning to ending. So what I'm saying is, if there were shortcomings or things that were worse about the Pac-Man World 1 remake, um, I would be a lot more blind to that. Someone who grew up on that game, and as a purist might say, oh yeah, that flutter jump move kind of does break the game. But for me, playing it for the first time, I didn't feel that way. But all these little changes like that, I think I'm definitely going to feel it a lot more as somebody who grew up on the second game. So I'm a little bit nervous because I'm holding this game to a very high standard, and I want it to meet that. So it's a little concerning when you see all these different changes. Like, well, is it going to live up? Whereas the first one I went into with no expectations really, other than I thought it was going to be pretty good. But beyond that, I didn't know what to expect fully. But I really enjoyed the first one, the remake of the first game. Um, and I do know that it had some pretty significant quality of life fixes over the original. Like some of the boss fights that were just really tedious before, they made kind of easier, but not in a way that it's like mind-numbingly easy, but just where you're not like getting frustrated because you die like 20 times because of like some bull crap. Nitro Rad has a pretty good video where he analyzes the original Pac-Man World game and kind of breaks down what the problems that it had with some of the bosses and stuff, some moments of tedium and of frustration. And so they addressed a lot of that in the remake. So I hope they kind of do the same for Pac-Man World 2, which I don't have a lot of gripes with that game. I mean, if I did, it wouldn't be, in my top 20 or 25, whatever, favorite games of all time. But one thing that is a big issue that I think they will fix is you had all these collectibles, like in one singular level, and you would have to get this in one go. You might have to there might be like 6 cherries to find, and 8 melons, and 4 peaches, and 3 pears, and 250 pack dots or something. Like, it's a lot to keep up with. It's kind of ridiculous. And like, if you miss just one pack dot, then it's like, well, do the whole level all over again and get everything all over again. Kind of like Crash Bandicoot with the boxes. You miss one box in a level, and you got to replay the level. You got to get every single box. They all respawn. You got to get them all in one go. But with the remake of the first Pac-Man World game, they fixed that to where once you got it, and you didn't have to do that. you know. Um, so I think that'll be the case here because I never 100 as much as I loved it, I never 100%ed the original Pac-Man World 2, and I don't know that I ever would. Even playing it as an adult now, where I'm better at games, and um, I it just would be extremely tedious, I think, to 100% it. But I think this is going to really encourage me, presuming they do make this change, which I'm almost 100% sure they will because they did in the other remake. Um, I think that'll encourage me to go back and replay every level and actually 100% complete this game for the first time. So that'll be exciting. I like having that replay value. If I miss something, I can go back into the level. I can do it again, but I don't have to get every single collectible because that can be frustrating because it's like, oh, I got to the end of the level, but all I'm missing is a pear. So you have to do the whole level, get everything. Like, yes, I got that pear I missed. Then you get to the end of the level. It's like, what? Now I'm missing an apple, but I got that apple on my first run. Which apple did I miss? Another collectible I forgot to mention is you would also collect these like Namco tokens that looked like, the old arcade tokens. with Pac-Man's face on them, doing the thumbs up and the wink. So those are back. They do show them in one of the in a brief portion of footage during the trailer, but I don't know what purpose they're going to serve in this game. So that's going to be curious. Actually, maybe I do, and we'll get into that in a second. This is going to get a little speculationy, um, but yeah, in the original game in Pac-Man World 2, there was a an arcade like in Pac-Land. So Pac-Land is kind of this little hub area that you can freely explore, and like there's different buildings you can go into that have different things, and there's some collectibles you can get. There's like some different NPCs you can talk to that are all Pac people. There's like Professor Pac. There's various other Pac men and women, and yeah, inside one of the buildings is a an arcade, and so you would get those tokens that you weren't. I always thought that was like a really cool completionist reward. You would use those tokens, and you would take them to the arcade, and you would unlock different arcade cabinets that let you play various old Pac-Man arcade games. Excuse me, my voice is trying to go out. I think maybe I might be wrong on the prices, but it might have taken like 10 tokens to unlock the original 1980s arcade cabinet of Pac-Man, so you could play through, an emulated version of that, and then save up to like 30 or something, and you'd unlock, they had Pac Attack and also Pac Mania and Miss Pac-Man. But I'm sure they've scrapped that because, nowadays they, on one hand, I guess it's kind of good because they actually see value in these arcade games more now because, like, they know they can make money from them. But from a consumer standpoint, it kind of sucks because it's like, because they've got these separate collections. Like, oh, this is the Namco arcade collection that's like $30, and it's got like, 6 or 7 old Namco arcade games included on it. Oh, here's Volume 2. It's another $30, and it's got 5 or 6 more. Oh, here's a Pac-Man arcade collection, and it's got some new Pac-Man arcade games that weren't included in the Namco Museum ones, but it's also got some that were, so it's like you're kind of buying the same thing twice. It's just kind of annoying. So I'm sure that the arcade games are not included in this because it's an opportunity for them to sell it separate, Definitely no Miss Pac-Man, unfortunately. I think there's still licensing issues with that, where Namco no longer has the full rights to Miss Pac-Man. I'm not going to get into that whole thing because I don't know if I fully understand it, to be honest. Like they only own partial rights to Miss Pac-Man as an IP. And it's kind of frustrating they don't just fully acquire it. If they forked out enough money, I'm sure they could get it, but they just don't want to. Maybe some of it's pride, like a principles thing, because they don't want to, because they have such bad blood now with the other company that owns the rights to Miss Pac-Man, but just do it and make the fans happy, because instead they've got this new character. It's Pac-Mom, and that's Pac-Man's wife, and like they retconned it, and it's like, well, this is Pac-Man. He feels like a dirty cheater. It's like, well, that's not. He left Miss Pac-Man to get with freaking Pac-Mom, and I don't. No, sir, I don't like it. But yeah, fortunately, Pac-Man World 2, other than having the arcade cabinet, which I'd say they're going to get rid of, it never really acknowledges the rest of Pac-Man's family in that game. So Pac-Mom shouldn't show up, which I'm kind of glad about. But yeah, so I think what they may end up scrapping the arcade with, because again, they still have the arcade tokens. And it's honestly, I feel like that's kind of lame. Like, I don't really care that much about it. But they have shown this new feature where you can get these little, like, statues that you can display all around, like, Pac Village, the little hub area. So I would say probably they're just going to use those tokens for, like, a gotcha, like, roulette thing. Like it'll probably be like a gumball machine type thing where, like, you pay for 1 coin for 1 go, and sometimes you'll get repeats, and you try to get all the figurines, which some game like Kirby in the Forgotten Land had something like that. It had these little capsules you could get with, like, playing the levels. You would get this currency, and you could use that, and maybe you'll get a new rare one, or maybe it'll be one you've already got. And I mean, it's whatever. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze has something similar. You can spend your banana coins, banana tokens, whatever they're called, to get these little figurines out of a capsule that you can like look around. You know, these 3D dioramas that you can zoom in on and zoom out of like the characters and the environments and stuff. Um, that's kind of a feature I'd never really care that much about. So it just kind of, it's not anything that really makes me like mad or upset if a game has it. 'Cause it's not like you're using real money to do the gotcha. It's just with in-game currency. But the fact that they're stripping away, presumably, nothing's been confirmed, but I'm like certain they're getting rid of the arcade mode, and they're probably going to replace it with something lame like that, because it's just like, well, we got these tokens. You know, what are we going to reward the player with if we're not going to give them the old arcade games, because we don't have the rights to Miss Pac-Man, and the other ones we're going to sell to people in like 50 different collections. I hope I'm wrong though. I hope that the figurines you get are unrelated, and that there is actually something more meaningful and cool that makes collecting the tokens more worthwhile. But we'll just have to wait and see. Something else I want to talk about with this game, I don't know if the music is going to be remade or not, like if they've got a remastered soundtrack, because in the Nintendo Direct, they have music from the original game playing that's like not remixed at all. But on Namco's channel, they put a trailer together that actually did have a new rendition of kind of like the game's main theme. And so I don't know if maybe the game will, maybe it'll be like, say, the Super Mario RPG remake or the Thousand Year Door remake, where you can switch between two different, like the OG music and the remix music. I'm not expecting that though, because the remake of the first Pac-Man World game, it used the same exact, like, kind of MIDI soundtrack or whatever. Would have been cool if they had redone it with like live, an orchestral arrangement, but they didn't. But the music in that game was still really good though, so I wasn't too fazed by it. But I think probably the most likely thing is that the game is going to just have the same exact old music, and that they just put a new rendition together for the purpose of the trailer and nothing else. That song probably won't actually be in the game, is kind of my expectation. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that. But they're going to be adding some new content. The game's going to be getting like some post-launch DLC they've talked about. So if you get the deluxe edition of the game, that'll include like the DLC, which I think they said is going to release in the winter, so maybe a few months after the game comes out. And I forget what the phrasing is, but they call it like whatever word they use, it implies that it's going to be like crossover DLC, like new levels that are going to be themed around. I'm assuming it's going to be other Namco properties. I doubt it would be like third party, like, oh, they're going to have like a Sonic crossover or something. It's probably just going to be like, I don't know if it's going to be other arcade stuff. Like here's a Mappy level, and here's a new Galaga level, and here's a Dig Dug level. I think that would be really cool. And that would still be cool in its own way too. They might draw from other properties. They might do like, so they're coming out with that new Katamari game, which again we're going to talk about here in a bit. They might be like, here's a Katamari Damacy level. I don't know how you would do that in a Pac-Man game though, because the gameplay in Katamari is so different. I don't know how you would design like a platforming level to make it feel like Katamari. But they could do that, and then maybe have like a Klonoa level. I don't know, maybe a Little Nightmares level. That would be kind of interesting, because Pac-Man's got ghosts, but it's all like light-hearted, kind of like, Saturday morning cartoon, kooky kind of spooky ghosts, not really like legit scary like Little Nightmares, which is kind of a pseudo horror game in a way. But they did have like a Pac-Man skin that you could get in the first Little Nightmares. I think you had to, in the Switch version, if you scanned like the Pac-Man amiibo from Smash Brothers. Then on what's her name, 6? Is that the name of the protagonist in Little Nightmares? Because she's got that like yellow like rain jacket she wears. I don't know what's the deal with that raincoat in like horror. Why is that a trope? I don't know if It started it, but I think the kid in It with like the red balloon, doesn't he have like a yellow coat, like a raincoat that he wears? And then Coraline, she wears a yellow raincoat. And then 6 in Little Nightmares, she does the same thing. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know what it is. Somebody let me know. Are there other examples of that? And like where Did something do it before it? Like what's the reason that all these different properties in the horror genre do this yellow hood thing? I don't know. But yeah, it would put like Pac-Man's eyes and mouth on the back of your hood in Little Nightmares. So maybe, since they've kind of crossed over Pac-Man and Little Nightmares before, maybe we get a Little Nightmares level. Maybe it's some other property Namco owns. I'm trying to think what else they even have besides like old arcade stuff. Um, they did that remake of what is it, like Baten Kaitos or whatever. I don't really know anything about that franchise. Um, what's that fight? They have a fighting series. Was it Soul Calibur? I think Soul Calibur is the one that they make, right? But I don't know how well that would fit into the Pac-Man universe. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do, or maybe it's just going to be a level based on that new game that came out just recently that heavily features Pac-Man. Shadow Labyrinth. I think it just released maybe like a week or two ago, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's out now. And that's a funny thing where, because again, I didn't get up and record a reaction to this direct because, like, as much as I would have loved to have seen Pac-Man World 2, I didn't think there was any way they would announce a remake because Shadow Labyrinth, it just came out. And they've been promoting that game for like well over a year. I remember way back, this might have been like 2 years ago, but somebody at Namco was saying like, yeah, we've got big plans for exciting stuff for Pac-Man's 45th anniversary, which is this year, 2025. So I look forward to it. We're working on a big game in celebration of Pac-Man's anniversary, and I was so excited, like, oh, it's gonna be Pac-Man World 2 remake. And then, maybe a year after that, I don't remember, maybe if it was like last year's Summer Game Fest. I don't remember when they announced it, or maybe it was at like the Game Awards. I think it was at one of Jeff Keighley's shows, maybe. They announced this weird, gritty Pac-Man Metroidvania thing called Shadow Labyrinth, and I'm just like, this just doesn't look that interesting to me personally. And from the review, I've not seen like a bunch of different review scores, but I know Nintendo Life gave it either a 6 or a 7 out of 10. They thought it was pretty middling, but again, I don't know if that's reflective of everybody's score for the game. But yeah, it felt like it was trying very hard to be the next Hollow Knight or a game of that caliber. It felt like people talk about movies being like Oscar bait or whatever. This kind of felt like Game Awards bait a little bit. Like they're trying to tick all the boxes for like a Game of the Year nominee, but maybe just kind of missed the mark a little bit because one of Nintendo Life's criticisms, I think they said that the game doesn't really do anything new or different for the genre, that it kind of does stuff that other games have already done in the space of Metroidvanias, but those games did it better. So it kind of does make me think like, well, maybe they made this game out of obligation or kind of an executive decision. It's like, we need to reboot Pac-Man. Let's try this grittier, darker thing. And like Metroidvanias have been kind of like all the rage here lately, so let's do that and let's try to like tick all these boxes for a game like Hollow Knight or, something like that. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll get that game eventually if it's on sale or something. But I think it's a full price, like $60 game, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just not a big Metroidvania person in general. I really love Metroid Dread. I adore that game. I also played Guacamelee maybe a year or so ago, and I was surprised how much I really loved Guacamelee. That game was really good too. But on the whole, I'm not the biggest Metroidvania buff. Like, I think the Shantae games are okay. I don't adore them necessarily. A lot of the other Metroid games, I did really enjoy Samus Returns on 3DS, but like I never beat Super Metroid. People consider that one of the best games ever made, but I just kind of got lost and frustrated, and it felt like every 2 seconds I'm trying to go into a morph ball and blow up and try to find every single square inch of the map, try to find which tile is going to explode and I can go down there. So it just got kind of tedious. And that's kind of my experience with a lot of Metroidvania games. Even Hollow Knight, I might have got like 10, 15 hours into it, and I really enjoyed it up to a point. But then it got to a point where I would hit a brick wall, and it's like, okay, I don't know where I'm supposed to go, and then I get lost and I get confused and I get frustrated. And it's like I've been back to this spot like 5 times. And I also really hated how it kind of does what Shovel Knight does, where like if you die, then you leave behind like a certain percentage of your money. So maybe you die and then you spawn back in way on the other side of the map, and it's like unless there's a nearby fast travel point, I'm gonna have to go trekking all the way back here to get my money, and then go all the way back if I don't want to explore that area. Maybe the reason I died is because the enemies are too strong and I'm not supposed to be there yet. So I got to go all the way back there and not die, grab my money, and then leave and go all the way back to this other spot that's easier that I'm actually supposed to do at this point of the game. So I don't love that. I think if you're gonna make a Metroidvania game, unless you have like a million places that you can teleport to where it's really really extremely convenient to get around, don't make it where when you die you lose a bunch of money and have to go back and get it. But that's enough ranting about that. So I never finished Hollow Knight. So yeah, Shadow Labyrinth, it didn't really appeal to me all that strongly, but they kept promoting it in all these trailers and Nintendo Directs and stuff and presentations. It just kept coming up again and again and again. It was like, man. And at this point, we're like over halfway through 2025, and it's like, yeah, they've been promoting this game like crazy for over a year. I guess this is the big 45th anniversary Pac-Man game they've been talking about, because they're not going to release another Pac-Man game this close. They're obviously very different in tone and genre, but still. But no, and that's kind of wild to me too, because it's like they've promoted this new weird thing for Pac-Man, the Shadow Labyrinth game, again for over a year, and then they announce Pac-Man World 2 Repack right after it comes out, and Pac-Man World 2 Repack drops in like less than 2 months. It comes out in late September, so like 7 weeks or something like that, and we'll be playing it. So I don't know what was up with that with the marketing. I don't know if like where Pac-Man World 2 is already a known thing that people have been begging for. They're like, well, we don't really need to promote the heck out of it because the people who want it are going to know about it and they're going to get it. Whereas Shadow Labyrinth is this brand new thing that we really want to catch on and get popular, so we need to try harder to sell it to people. Or maybe it's the reverse. Maybe they think Pac-Man World 2 is too niche, and that it would be a waste of money because, yeah, because like again, I'm pretty sure that Shadow Labyrinth is like a full price, like $60 game, but Pac-Man World 2 Repack is only $30, which I think is a steal. I almost feel like Namco was kind of lowballing themselves a little bit. Like I would have paid a premium. Like I would have paid $70 for this game. That's kind of what games typically go nowadays. I wouldn't have been happy if they did like Mario Kart and tried to sell it for 80, but I would have begrudgingly paid for it. um, but yeah, $30. I mean, for $30, like you would think they would have just like ported over the original game with like no new bells and whistles. It's just the old, just an emulated version of the GameCube game. That I would have paid $30 for. But yeah, this is a whole ground up remake with a bunch of added features and presumably quality of life changes. $30, I think that's a steal. But it does make me kind of wonder like how Namco values the Pac-Man World series, because I hope they'll continue this, because they put out a survey forever ago asking people like, would you buy a remake of Pac-Man World 2? What about a remake of Pac-Man World 3? Because there were 3 of these games. It was a trilogy. And would you buy a brand new Pac-Man World game, a Pac-Man World 4? And of course, I answered yes to every one of those on the survey. But yeah, personally, I'm glad as a consumer that I only have to wait less than 2 months from the announcement of this game. I'll be playing it in no time. So I'm not going to have this long, agonizing wait. And not only that, but it's pretty freaking cheap. It's $30. If you want to get the deluxe edition, it's $40. But still, that's nothing. That's the price of a 3DS game when those were still available in stores. It's kind of crazy to me. If you put together the price of Pac-Man World 2 Repack, one of my favorite games of all time, beautiful ground-up remake, $30, plus the price of the new SpongeBob game, which we're going to get to talking about here in a bit. SpongeBob Titans of the Tide, I think it's called, which looks really good. That game's $40. Put them together, those two great looking games, one brand new, one of them might as well be new. They could have been full price. They could have charged $70 for each of these games. It's two different companies. Pac-Man's Namco, and then the SpongeBob is THQ, but still, SpongeBob's big enough. Yeah, they could have totally slapped a $60, $70 price tag on there and people would have bought it. But yeah, if you put the price of those two games together, you get $70, which is still less than freaking Mario Kart World, which I still can't get over that game cost $80. And especially after Nintendo just announced they're like raising the price because of the Trump tariff situation. Oh, we're gonna have to raise the price of the Switch One now, instead of being like the OLED model, instead of being $350, now it's $400. Or the Joy Cons, now they're $100 instead of $95 after they already raised the price once before. Amiibo price is going up. We don't know if the Switch 2 price will go up, if Switch 2 games will go up. But then at the same time, it's like, because people will get mad at Nintendo and people will say, well, your anger is misplaced. You should be getting mad at Trump because of the whole tariff thing. But then you look at this, Namco, $30. They obviously have been aware of the tariff situation. And again, THQ with the SpongeBob game, $40. Why have the tariffs not hit? These games were announced like after it was announced that Nintendo was going to be raising those prices. So it's just not a good look for Nintendo, I don't think. I'm sorry. I'm not saying Trump is completely blameless in it, but I don't know. But yeah, these are two great games coming out at a price that I think is frankly a steal. But anyway, it talks, I think, on the Steam page. I was watching a video of another YouTuber talking about Pac-Man World 2 Repack, and he was saying apparently on the Steam page there's a place where it talks about like expanded levels or something like that. So I don't know if they're going to be like adding extra content, like making some of the levels longer or like fleshing them out in some way. I really don't know what to make of that, but that'll be interesting. It is one of those things where it's like I don't want them to change too much, because then it's like, well, this isn't the same game that I grew up with, that I played, that I loved as a kid. But we'll see. I mean, like, I don't, I'm more than happy to have extra content like the DLC stages and stuff like that. But I just hope they still preserve the nostalgia of the original game and don't make too many changes that dilute that. One other thing I want to talk about is the hub world, Pac-Land, which I already kind of talked about, where you could go to the arcade and different stuff in the originals. So I guess they're removing the arcade, but otherwise it seems like they're fully expanding and really fleshing out this hub area with a bunch of extra stuff to do. I don't know what that entails, but they have mentioned that they've expanded it. And it seems like maybe they're going to take a page off the first Pac-Man World game, where you could kind of explore worlds at your leisure, where you didn't necessarily have to do like World 1 first, then World 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. You could kind of pick and choose the order that you wanted. Maybe you had to do like World 1 first or something, but then you could kind of pick like, well, you could do World 3 before World 2, or World 5 before World 4. And it seems like they're making it where, because Pac-Land, I've been calling it kind of a hub world. It kind of is, but it's also kind of not in the game. You can go back to it at any time and redeem your points and stuff, but the world does take place on a map, so each individual level is its own place on a map. So it's not a hub world in the sense of like Mario 64, where Peach's Castle has all these paintings which house all the different levels. It's not like that, but it seems like they are making it closer to that in this remake, because instead of it being like the first spot on the map and then it leads into level 1, then 2, then 3, then whatever, from the footage we've seen, it looks like that's going to be the central part of the map, and it kind of branches off, where like from Pac-Land you can go to World 1, or you can go to World 2, World 3. So it seems like maybe you can tackle these levels in any order that you want. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. And even like when you're actually in the in Pac-Land, there's like these signs with arrows pointing to you, like this way to the volcano, this way to the snow level. So that's interesting. I'm not sure how to feel about that, but I mean, I guess that's a good thing. That the game isn't as linear now, presumably, and you can tackle levels in whatever order you want. Because it was kind of weird because the world map was one big circle, like you end where you started. So like the last this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but the last level is like the final boss actually takes place in Pac-Land. So you go all the way around the map and then kind of loop back to Pac-Land. So in that sense, Pac-Land was already kind of interconnected where, once you've beaten the game, then it's like, okay, I can use this to go to the last level of the last world, or I can go to the first level of the first world from here. But now they've made it even more interwoven. So that's interesting. Um, Back to what I was saying about the expanded levels. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I've played those, but I feel like the underwater levels kind of maybe sucked. Like they were kind of like on rails. So if you missed a collectible, you just have to redo the whole thing, and they just weren't all that fun. Maybe that's where the expanded levels thing comes in. Maybe they've completely overhauled the underwater levels because they realized they just weren't that fun in the original, and maybe they'll be like way better now. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. On the whole, I think the game looks really great though, for the most part. And kind of like the grassy areas, like the first world that they show in the trailer, I feel like maybe they could have done a little bit better. I don't know, like some of the textures and stuff feel a little bit low res, and I feel like they could have brought it up to modern standards a little bit better. Maybe that's just me. But then when they show like the remade snow level, and it's like, whoa, this is gorgeous. The snow level looks incredible. Um, so it seems maybe a little inconsistent. I don't know. Maybe it's just easier where snow is just all like white and stuff. Maybe like snow and ice are just easier to model and texture. I don't know. Versus like grass and stuff, because I definitely feel like those levels look better. Um, then they show some of the World 2 Bedoing Woods was the name of the forest level. That's one of my favorite levels where you're like bouncing from treetop to treetop. There'll be these like target shaped platforms you're bouncing along. They kind of changed the color of the skybox to make it more purpley, which kind of changes the mood and the tone. Whereas before it was just a lot darker, like it was just night out. So the skybox looks a little bit more cartoony in this one, I feel, and a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe in execution I'll really like it, but I feel a little bit weird about that. But on the whole, graphics wise, I think the game looks pretty good. I almost forgot to talk about the fact Pac-Man can talk in this one, which is kind of weird. Um, but yeah, I think they brought back the same guy who voice acted for Pac-Man in Pac-Man World 3, which came out like 20 years ago now, in like 2005 or something like that. Because Pac-Man World 3, it was weird because that game was like fully voice acted. All the characters had dialogue, including Pac-Man. But that was never the case for Pac-Man World 2. So why they're going back and adding voice acting to this one when they didn't in the remake of the first one is very weird. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, about everybody being able to speak. Mainly it's just Pac-Man that kind of bothers me. It's so weird hearing him have a voice. Because it's just like a very normal guy voice. It's just like, it almost makes me think like the Chris Pratt is Mario thing. It's just like, that's just not what you would expect Mario to sound like, so it's kind of jarring at first. But, maybe I'll warm up to it. And like Pinky, you hear her in the trailer say like Pac-Man, and they kind of give her sort of a like a what is it like in the Midwest U.S. where they have that kind of like don't you know their dear sort of kind of speaking voice, and it's like I feel like they used to try to like I don't want to be like Tucker Carlson Fox News with like the green M&M thing when they changed her shoes or whatever. So I'm not saying that it like I'm not trying to make it weird, but it seems like they kind of tried to make the pink ghost Pinky like she's very flirtatious with Pac-Man and stuff, and talks about like playing hard to get and stuff. So it's like they tried to kind of make her sexy in a way, but now with her having sort of this kind of sounding like a soccer mom there, don't you? Then it's like I don't know how I feel about that, but it's whatever. Maybe that'll make it funnier because it's like she's hitting on Pac-Man, but she's got this very unattractive sounding voice. Um, but yeah. Something I want to bring up real quick, and we've spent almost an hour talking about Pac-Man World 2 because I love this game so much. Is they with them giving this game a voice when it didn't have one before, it makes me kind of think, and the fact they got the voice actor who did the voice for Pac-Man World 3, it does feel like they probably are going to remake Pac-Man World 3 next. I feel like between that and also Talkman, if you played Pac-Man World 1, Talkman's like the main antagonist, like the final boss. It's like kind of this big mecha Pac-Man that's being controlled by this ghost. And that's like a DLC, like playable skin, if you like pre-order the game or something like that, or if you get the deluxe version. Or no, I think it's just if you own Pac-Man World, the repack of the first game, you get it. And so between the voice acting and then bringing back Talkman and making him relevant in the second game, it does feel like they're kind of trying to tie all three of these games together in a way, and make them more of an interconnected trilogy. Because Pac-Man World 2 made no references to Talkman. That game is very disconnected from Pac-Man World 1 and Pac-Man World 3, really. But then in Pac-Man World 3, they bring back the ghost who built Talkman, and now he's your ally, and you work together with him throughout, like, the whole game. So it's like they tried to have this connective tissue here, to where if you played the first game, then going into the second game, it's like, hey, we haven't forgotten about Talkman. To that way maybe lead into a third game of like, and here he is, the guy who made Talkman, but now he's good. And again, with the voice acting, getting the same voice actor, yeah, I could see it. Them doing a Pac-Man World 3 repack after this. So that almost instills some confidence in me that they're going to continue the Pac-Man World series and do the third game and maybe even make a fourth one eventually. I hope it doesn't take them as long as it did between 1 and 2, because my gosh, Pac-Man World 1 repack came out in 2022? So it's been like 3 years. I guess that's not terrible. But I don't know. Sooner would always be better. Maybe it was 2021 when that came out. I don't know. No, it was 2022, I think. But yeah. So maybe 3 years from now, 2028, we'll get the third game, and then 2031. Geez, I don't want to think about that. I'll be in my 30s. We'll finally get a new original Pac-Man World game after all this time, maybe. So that's exciting to consider. Nothing's been guaranteed, obviously. Nothing's been officially announced. But again, though, it's like, it seems like, well, maybe Namco is confident in it, because it seems like they're paving the way to doing a third one. But then it's like, why are they selling it for so cheap, and why are they releasing it so close to the announcement? That almost feels a little desperate. Like, we're not confident that this game would sell well if it was full priced, and we're also not going to give it the marketing that maybe it could use. So I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I should just be glad that this game is coming out and in a lot of ways looks great. I've got some concerns, and that it's going to be cheap, and that I don't have too long to wait. I should just be excited. Yeah, the only thing I think that I haven't really touched on is the co-op. They've added like a 2-player thing, but I don't really care. Does anybody play these kind of co-op things? Like, if it was like player 2 was like Miss Pac-Man or something, and you're both running around doing your own thing, that would be awesome. But it's not. It's the kind of co-op like is in Mario Galaxy, where one person is like the Luma, and you can kind of like aim around and pick up the star bits, and then you can shoot them. It's just not that interesting. They can also, almost like Kirby, they have like this suck move where they can like vacuum up the Pac dots. And I don't know if that's going to be something new that Pac-Man can do too, or if that's just exclusive to player 2. But either way, though, that could be interesting, but it could also maybe break the game a little bit. I don't know. So I'm not sure whether I would want Pac-Man to have that in his arsenal or not. But yeah, I think that pretty much hits on everything. The co-op mode kind of feels like a throwaway thing, kind of like Donkey Kong Bonanza, where one person can play as Pauline, but she doesn't actually run around. She's still on Donkey Kong's back. You're just pointing a cursor and clicking and making stuff happen. Same with like Pikmin 4's co-op. That's a huge step down from Pikmin 3's. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of whatever. I mean, it doesn't, it's inoffensive, the fact that it's there. I guess maybe somebody loves that sort of thing. Because I always hear people say, well, that would be a cute thing that you could play with your kids who's maybe not very good at it. But it's like, do people do that? Because even if it's a little kid, I feel like they would rather just, even if they suck and they just keep dying over and over and getting game overs in the first level, they would probably prefer actually playing as Pac-Man, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe little kids do love the point and click cursor stuff. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I think that's everything to talk about with for Pac-Man World 2. I will say too, there was one character who was voice acted, the main antagonist, Spooky, who was kind of a cool villain, kind of a lame name, but a cool villain. Um, he was voice acted. He kind of had a Darth Vader voice. You take these golden fruits, like he had this very deep, kind of echoey sort of voice. So maybe that's why they gave Pac-Man and the Ghosts and everybody else a voice to make it more consistent. Whereas the original Pac-Man world, I guess, had no voice acting. This one at least had one character that was voice acted. So they're like, well, let's just make everybody talk then, since he already talks. Um, but yeah, I kind of hope maybe, because the final boss with Spooky is maybe a little underwhelming. So I kind of hope they give it like a second phase, the way that they did Talkman in Pac-Man World, the remake. They kind of added an extra phase to his boss fight. So hopefully we get something like that for Spooky, because he was a pretty cool designed character who's kind of this looming threat throughout the whole game. And then you fight him, and it's kind of the backdrop, the setting of the final fight is cool, but he's kind of just going around doing his thing, and you just run up and hit him, and then he sends some like enemies your way, and you dodge his attacks, and you go up to him and you kick him, and then you just keep rinse and repeat. So he needs a second phase where he turns giant and transforms, and I don't know. So I think they probably will, because again, they did it with the last game. But with that, I think that's everything that I have to say about Pac-Man World Repack. Outside of that, in the Nintendo Direct, they announced a new Katamari game called Once Upon a Katamari. And I don't have a ton to say about it, but I am very, very excited for this game. I feel like the Katamari games are kind of a known quantity. It's like you know what you're getting. You're going to roll around this ball and get a bunch of stuff to stick to it and get really big and just rinse and repeat. That's the game. But it's such a fun gameplay loop, so I'm very excited. The one way they're changing it up is that I guess this game is going to be kind of about like time travel to different like periods in world history. So I was like, well, now you're in like feudal Japan. Now you're in like the Jurassic era. Now you're in, I don't remember. They showed some other ones in the trailer, maybe like ancient Egypt or something. But yeah, if you've never played Katamari, if you don't know what the gameplay loop is like, you play as this little person called the Prince of all Cosmos, and your dad, the King of all Cosmos, is this like ridiculous character. They're just like this omnipotent entity, but they're always like messing things up. It's almost like if Waluigi was like divine, if you can imagine how chaotic that universe would be. So you're having to kind of piece together your dad's mistakes, basically, and put the world back together. And in doing so, you're this little prince who's maybe like an inch tall. You're like tiny in this very huge world, and you're rolling around this sticky ball, and you stick stuff to it. Starting out, you can only stick little things to it, like maybe a dice or maybe a thumbtack, But then gradually it gets bigger and bigger, like a snowball. You roll a snowball down the hill, and you can get a big giant. And so eventually, as you get bigger, you can get bigger things to stick to. You can get like entire like people, pets, get like dogs rolled up into this big ball. And people, their arms start flailing around. And then you're just getting bigger and bigger, and now you're rolling up entire like skyscrapers. Like you got a whole city. You're rolling up the clouds. You're up in the sky. You're rolling up planets. It's insane, but it's such a fun gameplay loop. It's a lot of that zany, silly, crazy, meme-worthy kind of WarioWare sort of vibe, or like Rhythm Heaven, and I love that sort of thing, So I'm all here for it. It's another Namco property, so again, between Once Upon a Katamari and Pac-Man World 2 Repack, very excited for what Namco has to offer this year. Um, but yeah, it's also going to have some kind of like online, I think, versus mode. I think the other one, We Love Katamari, I think it had a 2-player mode too, but I never really played it. It seemed like maybe it was kind of like a throwaway sort of like thing, I'm not sure. Maybe it's amazing, but I've not ever heard anybody talk about it. But this one maybe is actually going to be like have some really fun versus mode stuff. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Um, but uh, but yeah, again, I don't know how much there is to say about it. I hope that it's fairly meaty in terms of content because I feel like the other Katamari games are kind of short. Um, but yeah, this is the first original new Katamari game after I don't know how many years. Because they had Katamari Damacy Reroll in 2018, which was a remake of the first one, and then they did We Love Katamari Reroll, which was another remake of. I don't know if that one was the second game, maybe, but I think that was kind of like the fan favorite. Like everybody said that We Love Katamari was the best, so that's why they remade that one, I guess. And now this brand new one, so I'm excited to see what changes they make and maybe how they take advantage of the game being on new hardware. I don't know if this is coming to Switch 1, but if it's exclusive to like Switch 2 and PS5 and Xbox Series X, then I hope they really do something crazy to just kind of push the hardware to its limits and, because that's already kind of hard to imagine on the PS2 how that game worked, just with like the physics and just like all the different objects rendered in at a time. It's always kind of like really simple, like not really a high polygon count, and they've all got kind of like low textures, but that's kind of part of the game's charm. But I don't know. I hope they push it to a whole new envelope here, but we'll see how that works in the actual game. But I'm definitely very excited for it. Um, Another game I'm pretty excited for was they announced Dragon Quest Stories 3. No, sorry, not Dragon Quest. Monster Hunter Stories 3, excuse me. Um, yeah, so I've never really played the mainline Monster Hunter games, really, at least not much. I played a demo of one on like the 3DS. Which one was it? Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate or something like that, I think. And I hated it, but I only played the demo single player. I could see the games being fun if you have like a whole squad of people to play with, but as a solo experience, it was not fun. It was so tedious. I had like a 30-minute time limit, and for 30 minutes, I'm hacking and slashing away at this one enemy that keeps running away, and I'm chasing it down, and I don't even think I won. So it's like, well, that was just 30 minutes down the drain that I'll never get back because I don't have anything to show for it. Uh, but yeah, it was really annoying because it was like I think the newer Monster Hunter games are they all like one kind of interconnected like open area, but in this one the map was divided into like loading zones, and it was so annoying because like I'd be attacking this monster and it might whack me with its tail or something, send my character flying, knock me into a loading zone, so I'd have to wait for it to finish loading, putting me in this area I didn't want to go in, and then I'd have to walk back through the loading zone again to get back to where the monster was at. um, so yeah, it was not a pleasant experience, but I could see if I had a squad of people to play it with how these games could be fun. But as somebody who tends to play a lot more single player, in other words, doesn't have a lot of friends, uh, I gravitated more toward the Monster Hunter Stories games, which are these single player, um, story focused RPGs, and it's like turn based. And I haven't played the second one, or I mean the first one. I played the second one because Capcom did what Square Enix does a lot, and they put out a demo. I think like months before the game came out of Monster Hunter Stories 2, and it's like a meaty demo that's like maybe 5+ hours long or something, and you can transfer your progress over to the actual game when it comes out if you decide to buy it, which I think is a really great strategy because they did that for like Dragon Quest 11 and got me like hooked, and so I bought the game and I fell in love with it. Square Enix did, so Capcom did that with Monster Hunter Stories 2, and I really enjoyed it. So I bought the game. I got maybe 10 or 15 hours into it, and then I kind of fell off. Not because the game was bad or anything, or like I hit a brick wall like I do with Metroidvanias. I just kind of got bogged down with a lot of other games to play, so it kind of became not as much of a priority and kind of fell into my backlog. I have a hard time sticking with RPGs just where they're so long, you know. Um, but I always intended to go back to it, but I never did. And I did end up purchasing the first one when they, announced that they were remaking it for the Switch, because it was originally a 3DS game, and I actually thought about downloading it off the eShop like right before the 3DS eShop shut down. I was kind of like looking at like all these game, these gaps in my 3DS library, and it's like, well, maybe I'll get Monster Hunter Stories the first one because I like what I played of the second one, but I never did. And I'm glad I didn't because again they remade it. So I ended up downloading that. I got it on sale on the eShop for pretty cheap, I think maybe $10 or something. So I've got the first two games just kind of sitting there on my Switch library. I intend to play them at some point. But the third one looks like it's probably going to be the best one. I don't know. I did really like the setting of the second one, where it's kind of this sort of Hawaii inspired, like Pacific Islander kind of place with people living in like huts made out of like straw and stuff, and you're along the beach. I thought that was a really cool setting. I know there's like Horizon Zero Dawn kind of starts out in kind of a beach area, but I don't know how many games actually start off with you being on this like tropical paradise sort of place, you know. So I really like that. Um, and I don't mean a game like Animal Crossing. I'm talking about like a substantial single player story driven game. Um, but so I really love the theming of that one, and their outfits kind of, I guess, maybe loosely inspired by like Hawaii and stuff, and doing like luau's, you know. I love the cutscenes. I didn't love the stupid, I forget his name, but like the cat character that makes a bunch of cat puns. You know, that's absolutely perfect and stuff like that. Who follows you along throughout the whole adventure. Oh, I hate that. I hate that trope of like, I feel like there's so many like Japanese pieces of media that come up with this character that they think is going to be like a cute, quirky mascot that everybody loves, but it's just like so annoying. Like, please just shut up and stop talking. You're taking away from the game. I hate that you're the face of marketing for this game, you know. So yeah, I forget the name of that cat. I think that cat might have been in the first one too, because some of the things that it said in the second one kind of alludes to the fact that maybe it was around during the events of the first game. Um, so I hope he's not in the third one, but he probably is. Um, I hate that cat. But other than that, the cutscenes were really well done and stuff. Again, I love the visuals. I actually thought a while back ago, before this remake or before this third game was announced, going back and playing the second one again and see if it got like a performance or resolution boost, because the game looked really great. In some ways, I felt like they nailed the art style of kind of the cell shading and stuff better than Breath of the Wild did. Um, but I think the resolution was kind of low, and maybe the frame rate could be a little choppy. Um, yeah, I think now that I'm thinking, I think around the time I quit playing, I'd gotten to this like forest village that looked absolutely gorgeous, but the frame rate was really not good there. So yeah, I'm curious if that's one of the games that would run a lot better if I played it on Switch 2 now. So maybe I'll go back to it sooner rather than later. I don't know, or maybe I'll just start with the first one, and then once I beat the first one, then I'll start a new file on two. But either way, I won't be purchasing Monster Hunter Stories 3 for a long time because I want to beat the first two games before I do. So it might be years before I touch it. But from what they showed, it looks really cool. You know, I like the art style. They still go with that cel shaded kind of Breath of the Wild look, but the characters aren't as chibi now. It's a little bit more mature in the sense where the humans are more like realistically proportioned to like a full sized adult person. And you're not playing as like a kid like you were in, I think, both the first two games. Um, it does feel a little bit in some places like kind of a like they plagiarized off Zelda, because it starts, you see the character and he's got like blonde hair and a blue tunic that looks just like Link's outfit from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and he jumps off a cliff and he's got his arms and his legs out, kind of like, you know, in all the Tears of the Kingdom trailers when you're jumping off one of the sky islands and you hear the da 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 da. It looked almost shot for shot just like that, but then he whistles and a big red dragon picks him up, and it's like, oh, now we're ripping off Skyward Sword. I don't know why so many games feel the need to do that. You know, it's like they'll make this game that's like heavily inspired by, you know, the gameplay system from Zelda or from some other series, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But then it's like, and we gave the character a green tunic, or we gave him, and it's like, why are you making the character look so much like Link? Like, just make it your own original thing. I get if you want to copy the gameplay, because Nintendo's king when it comes to really polished, really fun gameplay. You know, you make a game that's like Wind Waker, that's like more of the same, sailing around, charting islands on your map. I think that's awesome. But don't make a character that looks just like Link. Make it your own thing, you know? Change the set pieces around it. But no, the game looks really good. You know, really well animated story cutscenes like the other games have. So I'm definitely very interested in this one because it's hard for me to really get into RPGs, and that's part of why I kind of fell off of it. But I did enjoy the turn-based combat system in Monster Hunter Stories 2 from what I played of it. Um, it's kind of got like a, from what I remember, kind of like a rock paper scissors sort of system where it's like certain weapons are stronger against certain like monster types and stuff. I believe that's how it worked. It's been a bit since I played it, which is also kind of similar to Fire Emblem. Has a system like that, but I've not really played a lot of Fire Emblem where it's like lances beat arrows, which beat swords, or which beat lances, or something like that. I might have it wrong. But it was something kind of like that. But it was simple enough that I was still able to follow it. I wasn't getting like super confused like sometimes happens to me when I play RPGs. Um, and then it also had this thing where like monsters, it almost kind of felt like something from like the Mario RPGs, like Mario and Luigi or the Paper Mario games, where um, you might not just be attacking the enemy in one spot. They might have like a weak spot that you need to attack first, where it's like I need to focus my attack on this monster's tail or its wings. I got to break the tail or break the wings, and then that'll weaken it. That'll make it where it's like immobile for 3 turns or something, and I'll be able to get a lot of damage in once I take out this other part of its body. So that was kind of fun, kind of planning your strategy around that. And those areas were kind of open ended. It wasn't like fully open world, but you know, maybe a little bit like the first Xenoblade, but on a smaller scale, where it was kind of these large open environments, but you know they weren't all interconnected into one seamless map. You know, this game, I don't know. Maybe Capcom's talked more about this game on their website, and I need to read more into it. All I have to go off of is the trailer that I watched. But when he jumps off the cliff and he does that whistle thing, I hope that you actually it is like a fully intertwined open world and you can like fly to wherever you want to go and then like drop down and you know fight the enemies in this area and grind for material because you could go around. You had a mount in the second game and you could pick up materials, so it felt like kind of a step toward an open world, like they were drawing inspiration from Breath of the Wild. I hope this game goes further in with that, and because again, I think it's fine if you want to copy gameplay, maybe not as much exact character designs and stuff like that. But I hope you can't, because that was something that I think would have been cool. Like in that I was kind of hoping for in Tears of the Kingdom, like where Link has that like flight suit that's almost like a flying squirrel, that you would be able to more freely fly around. But not really. You kind of can with like these mechs that you build, the Zonai contraptions, but then they break after so long or you run out of batteries. But something more like Skyward Sword, because it always felt like the Loftwing was a little underutilized. You know, because like you'd fly around in this sky area, but there wasn't that much to do in it. It wasn't as explorative as the Great Sea was in Wind Waker. Um, but I think this game could potentially be the perfect marriage if that's actually how the gameplay goes. If I can fly around and drop down wherever I want and explore, and then it's like, well, maybe I don't go to this place yet because the enemies here are level like 80 and I'm only like level 5, so I don't want to drop here, but I can if I want to. But I can just kind of go anywhere I want to, tackle it in whatever order. That could be really, really fun. And I can just fly and just drop down wherever from my mount that can fly from my dragon. That'd be awesome. I hope it's not just that dragon is just for like fast travel, just to like teleport. You know, you just whistle and then the dragon kind of then you have a little cut scene and then it loads and then now you're in the next area. I hope you can actually fly wherever you want to go on that dragon. Would be really really cool. Just one seamless area. But yeah, I've never been that into the mainline Monster Hunter games. Mostly probably because I just don't have a squad of people to play with. Those games don't seem like they were really made to be played by yourself. But this game is, and that's kind of the way I tend to prefer to play a lot of games. So you know, I think this game will be pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised with it. This isn't a game that's like an immediate first priority for me to go out and buy day one because again, I've got the first 2 games to play. But eventually, I think I probably will pick this up. Maybe when it's on sale or something on the eShop, like I did with the first game. But yeah, this was another one in the direct that I was like, well, that was a pleasant surprise. Not necessarily a pop off moment for me, but like I'm happy about that. That's one I'm looking forward to. Then we had Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I don't really have much to say about that. That was a game that I think like people were like really really excited when it was first announced because I guess I'm not super into like the Dragon Ball video games. But I know people really like the was it like Budokai Tenkaichi games. I think there was like three of them, uh, and I guess this game was kind of almost like a spiritual successor to that in a way, or supposed to have been. So people were really really hyped for the game before it came out. But I've not really heard a lot of people talk about it since then. I feel like there might have been a thing where like the characters were not balanced, or they might have got something wrong and it wasn't as good as people thought it would be. I don't know. Maybe that's not the case. You can correct me if I'm wrong. This probably won't be a game that I pick up. I don't know. Like I enjoy Dragon Ball Z. I watched my exposure to Dragon Ball was on like Nicktoons Network, like way back when, in probably like 2010 or 11. They would air episodes of Dragon Ball Z Kai, which I guess was like the remake of Dragon Ball Z, where they like I don't know if they like digitized all the like cell like the individual animation cells or something and made it like I guess widescreen and redid like the voice lines and stuff and maybe changed some of the writing here and there. But yeah, they aired that version on Nicktoons Network, but they also censored a lot of like the blood and the like the language. They took out all the swearing and stuff. So I watched that kind of like the watered down version of Dragon Ball, but I really enjoyed it as a kid, watching through from you know the uh, Frieza saga and like you know all the stuff with like Goku's brother like Raditz or whatever, up through you know I saw the um, Vegeta, and then the Frieza saga, and then finally the Cell saga with like the Cell games and all that. And I guess the androids were their own saga, right? I always kind of lumped that in with Cell, but I guess that was kind of two different arcs or whatever. Um, but I never actually got to watch like the Buu saga, like with Majin Buu. Like I know about him. That was kind of like the last arc of the series before it ended, and then they did like Dragon Ball Super, which I've seen a little bit of. Like I know about like Lord Beerus and stuff. He's a pretty cool villain slash ally, I guess, whatever he's supposed to be. This god entity who's kind of, I guess he's kind of unaffiliated. He's just kind of doing his own thing, you know. Um, but yeah, I've not really because I think did they ever finish Z Kai like remaking? I don't think they ever remade the Boo saga like they were supposed to, did they? Because I think like they had like a tsunami that hit Japan, and I think it hit that studio that was working on it, and I guess just like ruined everything that they had. And I guess I don't know if they just didn't have any backup, so I think they like canceled Z Kai. So I don't know if they ever actually did a Kai version of the Boo saga. So I've never seen it. That's just kind of a big gap in my Dragon Ball knowledge. Yeah, I think is that where Goku goes like Super Saiyan like 3 and he's got like the really long hair. I've never seen it. I actually did watch a little bit of GT though. I know that's the one that everybody kind of hates. I watched some of that, not a ton. And I've seen again a little bit of Super. So I'm kind of a Dragon Ball fan. I've got a Goku. I think my electric fan might be covering it, but somewhere back there I've got a Goku figure. It might actually be behind my Avatar figurines on that bottom shelf, so you probably can't see it. So I'm like kind of a casual Dragon Ball fan. I'm not like a hardcore. I've not seen all of it. Um, and as far as the games, I picked up Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 on Switch. It was on sale on the eShop for like $10. And on the same day, I also bought for $10. They had Dragon Ball Fighters or Fighter Z, however you say it, for $10. One of them being more of a 3D fighting game, the other one more of a 2D, I guess kind of closer to Street Fighter. I played each of them for maybe a couple hours. I don't know if Fighters is really for me because again, I'm not a big multiplayer. I tend to play more single player games, um, and so I'm not really like good at competitive fighting games or anything like that. So I'm more interested in like the single player stuff, and it seemed like Fighter Z didn't have a whole lot of that, but that Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 had a lot more in terms of like single player, like doing like missions and stuff like that. And I kind of preferred how it was 3D and you kind of had the open area you could go around. But I just had so many other games, I just never really got that into it. But maybe sometime I'll go back and play it some more. Don't they still come out with DLC for that game? I feel like they still come out with DLC. Like That's part of the problem and why I don't think I'll get this game. There's like a million Dragon Ball games that you can play on modern systems. And as somebody who's more interested into it for the single player, I feel like they all kind of do the same thing. It's like relive the historic moments of, experience the Vegeta arc and experience where he transforms into a big old monkey man and you gotta cut his tail off and experience Frieza and fight Frieza on Planet Namek. It's like they hit the same story beats in like every single game. So it's like if I just want like to experience the world of the games or the world of the show, but in game form to play through all those beats, like what's the one singular definitive game? I kind of feel like maybe Dragon Ball Z Kakarot might be the one. Um, I played a few minutes of that game on PlayStation. I think it was like free on PlayStation Network or whatever, if it's still on there, the subscription service. So I'd like to play it at some point. If it runs better on Switch too, maybe I get the Switch version. But it's kind of funny. I don't think like the Switch has so many Dragon Ball games. Like probably like I don't even know 6, 7, 8 at this point. Who knows? There was like Dragon Ball Fighters, Xenoverse 2. Was it Dragon Ball The Breakers? It was like a asymmetric multiplayer thing. That seemed kind of interesting. I thought about getting that game, but I don't know. The online community's probably dead for that now. I don't know if anybody still plays it. And then Kakarot, and now this one. So like at least 5. There may even be more that I'm not thinking of. Have any of them come out day and date with the other platforms? Maybe Breakers, the online one. But the other ones I think would get announced like 1 or 2 years or more after they came out on other platforms. Because I know when they announced Xenoverse 2, that was like came out in the launch year of the Switch 1. But I think it had already been out on other platforms for like a year or two. And then same with Kakarot did not launch on Switch day and day. It was like a year or so later. And same with Fighters and now Sparking. So it's just kind of funny. Maybe moving forward with Switch 2, maybe these Dragon Ball games will come out on the same day. I don't know. But yeah, so I kind of doubt I'll get this game. But I feel like if I really want to experience just like playing through the events of the show, and I'm not interested in like a competitive, really well balanced fighting game with like perfect mechanics and no latency, whatever, just as a more casual experience. Maybe Kakarot's my best bet. Because again, I feel like when that game came out, it got maybe kind of mixed reception. But I think they've updated a lot. They've added a bunch of content, like DLC expansions. What's like this is the, um, you know, Dragon Ball Daima expansion. That's the new show, right? That's kind of almost kind of like a redux of Dragon Ball GT, I guess, where Goku becomes a kid again or whatever. Um, but yeah. So I don't really have anything else to say. I don't think about Dragon Ball other than rest in peace, Akira Toriyama. He died was a little over a year ago, maybe at this point. Maybe it was longer than that. I don't know. And also Lord Frieza, Supremacy Forever. Frieza's a great villain. I need to get a Frieza figurine back there, but I don't have one yet. But yeah, that's all I think to say about that. What else was in the presentation? The Yakuza games. Again, I don't really play mature games, so I don't really have anything to say about those, but it's kind of cool that they're bringing over 2 more of those, because they brought, was it Yakuza 0 or something like that? I forget what it's called. Yeah, so I'm happy for the people that are into the Yakuza games that have been waiting for like a handheld version that they can play on their Switch, because it's kind of weird because Sega's been really supportive of Nintendo this generation. But I know, like, I think it was like the director or something over Yakuza was like, Yakuza, however you pronounce it, was like, yeah, the Nintendo, they didn't say it quite like this, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, slight exaggeration, but like, yeah, the Nintendo audience, that's for babies. Nobody would play this game on a Switch, so we're not going to bother porting it. But I'm glad they eventually changed their tune on that and are bringing those games to Switch, because now this will be the 3rd one, and I'm assuming they'll probably go back and continue to bring more and more of these Yakuza games over to the Switch 2 at the very least, if not Switch 1 as well. But But yeah, I think it's kind of funny. I feel like I remember reading a thing where it was almost like Sega and Nintendo were like mafia turf wars back in the day. I think there was a story about like wasn't there a thing where it's like a Sega employee like kidnapped like a Nintendo executive or Nintendo employee or something crazy like that. It was like holding them for ransom. So maybe Sega's Yakuza series is actually kind of an autobiography about their shady past. I don't know, but I think that was the thing. I feel like Did You Know Gaming did a video talking about it. There's like some trivia from Did You Know Gaming that I'm like, I mean, like you guys have developed a reputation for yourself, so like I guess I shouldn't question the authenticity. But this sounds so outlandish. I don't know. Um, but uh, but yeah. So that was a thing they announced. That's cool. Persona 3 Reloaded, is that what it's called? Again, I don't really play mature games, but that's another big Sega property, so Sega came in pretty strong. You can always really count on Sega, Capcom, and Namco to really support Nintendo a lot. And wasn't always the case, but Square Enix also. Obviously, they were big on the NES and Super Nintendo with Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and stuff. Then them and Nintendo kind of had some bad blood during the Nintendo 64 PlayStation generation. They kind of went exclusively to PlayStation for a long time, but they've been pretty back in full force, especially with these HD 2D games. You know, they did the Octopath Traveler 1 and 2 and all that, and Triangle Strategy, and remaking some of their old games in that style, Dragon Quest 3 and now 1 and 2. That's another game I'm surprised was not in this presentation, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, because they dropped a new trailer for that, like, I think the same day or maybe the day after the Nintendo presentation. It's like, why not just throw that in there? Again, if they had, like, all the stuff that they already had, but put that SpongeBob in there that came a day later, put that Dragon Quest in there that I think was the same day or a day later, I think that would have been a pretty good showing. But maybe Square Enix or Nintendo or both were like, nah, we don't really need to have 3 Square Enix HD 2D games in one presentation. Arguably 4 if you consider that it's Dragon Quest 1 and 2 in one package. But they did announce a new Octopath Traveler game, which I never played the other ones. I thought the art style was interesting. I think they kind of got that Paper Mario sort of like diorama thing going, but with like really, really nice lighting. But then it's also kind of like pixel graphics, so it's interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of like pixel art styles, but as far as pixel art goes, I mean that's probably as good as it's ever going to get. You know, I know a lot of people are hoping they remake Chrono Trigger in this style, so for those fans, I hope so. And that's a game if they remake, I probably will buy because I never played Chrono Trigger on the SNES or on the DS, but I've always heard nothing but good things. It's like people's favorite game of all time, and it's got that Akira Toriyama art. You know, the Dragon Ball guy, because he also did the art in the Dragon Quest games. A lot of dragons with that guy. He also had that one game that came out. I think it maybe didn't do super well. That came out, I think, not too long after he died. That was like Sandland or whatever. I thought that looked interesting, but apparently, I don't know. I think the critic reception was kind of mid on that, but I thought it looked kind of neat. It was different. Um, but yeah, so they announced the Octopath game. I probably won't be picking that up. They announced this other one. It was like something Elliot, I think. And it's got the same HD 2D art style. I don't know if it's like a spin-off of Octopath or what it is, but it's more of an action RPG. You're not doing the turn-based battles like in the other Octopath games. So if I wasn't going to get one of these games, it would probably be that one because I'm kind of more interested in that. Like I've been playing a lot of Fantasy Life. I've sunk over 200 hours into that game. I'm hopelessly addicted. And it kind of reminds me of that. Just, you know, you're fighting these enemies in real time, and it's still, you know, you've got your stats that you're leveling up and your skill trees. I'm assuming this Elliot game has that too. But yeah, it's just kind of more like Zelda or something. It's like a top-down 2D, but like in real time, you're slashing away at these enemies with your sword or whatever, and not like taking turns. Because again, I mentioned earlier with Monster Hunter, it's really, really hard for a turn-based RPG to grab me because they're so long, and I feel like the gameplay in a lot of them is so similar. And in some cases, the battle mechanics can just be too complicated and over my head. Um, Xenoblade's kind of a weird in between where it's like kind of an action RPG, but you're still kind of like you're picking what you want your character to do, and then you're kind of just watching them slash their sword. You can kind of move them around to a more optimal part to kind of like dodge or to hit the enemy's weak spot. But it kind of feels turn based in the sense that you're picking these attacks from a menu and stuff. But just actually just I press the B button or whatever button, and my character slashes their sword. Just that 1-to-1, I am the character, and I'm not telling the character what to do. Um, Generally, I kind of prefer that. So I doubt I'll get the Elliot game, but if I was going to get one of these, that would probably be the one. So I thought that looked kind of interesting. We'll see on that as they share more information. Um, I thought I was going to talk about that SpongeBob game in this video, but we're already like almost we're over an hour and a half in. Maybe we still. I don't know. I probably don't have as much to say about the SpongeBob as I did the Pac-Man because again, I love 3D platformers. I got the Astrobot shirt. I feel like my voice is starting to go too. I can hear it trying to go out, getting a little hoarse. So we might have to wrap this up before long. But I don't know. Maybe we can rapid fire and we can do the SpongeBob and we. But yeah. What else was in the direct? The campfire game that I didn't care about. That's how we segue into SpongeBob. The campfire song. Let's gather around the campfire. Okay. Yeah. Let's just forget what else was in the presentation. Let's just talk about SpongeBob. Oh, I guess Final Fantasy Tactics. Not a game I'm interested in. I'm not a big fan of. I need to get into the Final Fantasy games. I want to play them. I want to start with 7 because I've always heard that's like one of, if not the best. I've heard 6 is good too. I bought a ton of the Final Fantasy games on an eShop sale, so I own like 1 through 10 or something like that. I've just not really played any of them. But the tactics game, I'm not a big fan of like grid-based, like real-time strategy games or whatever. Like I'm a massive Mario fan, and I've not even beat either of the Mario plus Rabbids games because I just don't love that grid-based system. I want to eventually. I know Sparks of Hope kind of gets rid of the grid, which I think I would like more. But I kind of want to beat the first one before I play the second one, and I don't love the gameplay of the first one because it's just not for me. The XCOM or whatever style of gameplay. But anyway, moving on. Talking about SpongeBob. I I'm really excited for this game. So Battle for Bikini Bottom is another one of my all-time like top 20 favorite games of all time, just like Pac-Man World 2. I would almost put those games in like parody. I love them so much. Not parody, but parity. On pair with one another. Um, Also Spyro, the first Spyro game, Spyro the Dragon, those three are like neck and neck with each other. I don't know which of those I like more. Those are three of my babies. Um, but yeah, I think this game looks really solid. I loved Battle for Bikini Bottom, and I thought the remake was great. Some people were underwhelmed with it, and it was a little buggy and stuff at first, but I think they fixed a lot of that. The Switch version, not super great. I wouldn't recommend that version, but on PlayStation, like it's so gorgeous. Such a beautiful, well done, one-to-one remake of the original game. A few little nitpicks here and there, but on the whole, I do think that is the definitive way to play it. So I think THQ Nordic and Purple Lamp Studios, the team behind the remake, did a really good job capturing the original development team's vision behind the game. I think Heavy Iron Studios was the names of the ones who did it back then. I'm guessing they're defunct now. I don't know. But the developers who did the remake, they consulted with the original devs, and you could tell they really wanted to put the love and care into the remake to get it just right. And then they made Cosmic Shake, which I was excited for. And admittedly, I was kind of disappointed with Cosmic Shake. I didn't love that game. It was, I thought, a little too easy. And I mean, it's a Nickelodeon game, so obviously they're going to want to make it not crazy difficult, because they target that kid demographic. But I think they know they've got a big demographic of, you know, 20 and 30 something year olds who grew up with SpongeBob and still hold it in their hearts. So I kind of felt like that game was a little too easy, and I didn't love. I thought the bosses were really disappointing. Even the final boss was very anticlimactic when the bosses originally were one of the highlights in Battle for Bikini Bottom. These giant robot mechs not too dissimilar from the giant robot mechs that I love so much in Pac-Man World 2. I don't know why these games have so many parallels, but they do. Games about yellow characters in a platformer where you fight these giant robotic mech bosses that are one of the highlights of the game. Uh, but yeah, Cosmic Shake. I was also hoping it'd be a little bit more of an open sandbox because it was like Battle for Bikini Bottom toyed with that idea, but it was pretty linear. You were mostly going in a fixed path. Like, say, if you think through like Jellyfish Fields, you know, the whole thing is you kind of working your way to the top where you fight King Jellyfish and then you go down this slide at the end. So it's like they kind of take inspiration from Bob on Battlefield from Mario 64, but it's not like, well, you can go to the top of the hill and fight him, and then there's this other stuff you can go and do in these other places. It's kind of just a linear, you know, you get to the top of the hill, you fight the boss, and then you're pretty much done with the level. Um, Probably the only real exception to that, mostly, I would say, is Downtown Bikini Bottom. That one actually does feel kind of sandboxy, and it's like the second level in the game. So I was kind of hoping Cosmic Shake would be more like that, but it was still very linear. The levels were a lot bigger than the ones in Battle for Bikini Bottom, but that didn't necessarily make it better. It was just took you much longer to get from point A to point B. Um, but this game, I don't know. This new one I think looks really promising. I thought they were going to do the same thing they did in the second game. I thought it would be kind of more of Cosmic Shake because they teased this game forever ago. It might have been over a year ago. They teased they were working on this new SpongeBob game that was kind of had more of a spooky angle that was going to have the Flying Dutchman was going to play a big part in it. They didn't give us a title or anything, and they showed that Patrick could turn into a ghost, and it kind of looked like how in Cosmic Shake Patrick followed you throughout the whole game and had some commentary. There was some back and forth banter. But he was kind of like Navi or something. He was just your companion. He got turned into a balloon, so he just kind of floats around and follows you. And I thought that's what Ghost Patrick was going to be here, but no, in this game it looks like you can fully play as SpongeBob or Patrick, and you can swap between them at any time and turn the other one into a ghost, and then the other one's physical. So I don't know how that's going to work, if there's like some puzzles you'll have to solve, or maybe you have to get Ghost Patrick to phase through this wall, and then you can turn into him, and now you're on the other side, and then you got to hit a switch to where SpongeBob can come over. I don't know. But that could open the door to some interesting gameplay mechanics. It'd be really cool if it was co-op, but I don't think it is. Um, but but yeah, I love how the marketing is on point for this game. I love how they got David Hasselhoff in the trailer, and he's doing all the memes. He's playing the mayonnaise, and the music's great. They do kind of a parody of like What Shall We Do with the Drunken Sailor. So they got this sea shanty music. And then they do the Wellerman, which is a song, another pirate song, a sea shanty I discovered a few years ago. There was some different people, like Anna Pantsu, I think is the name of her channel, and some other popular music YouTube channels that did a rendition of it that's just like really, really good that I'll listen to like in my playlist sometimes. So it was cool seeing the Wellerman in there because I don't think that's ever actually been in an episode of SpongeBob. But yeah, it really baffles me though that they got David Hasselhoff to do the marketing, but it's like David Hasselhoff was, I mean, it's awesome, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but David Hasselhoff was in the first SpongeBob movie. He was a pivotal plot point in the movie, like toward the climax of the movie, and they made a THQ, the same company, they made a tie-in video game that was like a sequel to Battle for Bikini Bottom. But they couldn't use David Hasselhoff's likeness in that game that came out like 20 years ago. People have been really begging, asking THQ to remake that game ever since they did Battle for Bikini Bottom, to remake the movie because people love the movie game too. They don't do that though. They make their own game, Cosmic Shake, and now they make another game that's their own game. And they get David Hasselhoff, but it would have been the perfect opportunity to remake the movie and put his likeness in the movie when they couldn't before. Because instead it's just SpongeBob and Patrick on the back of this just generic character that I think they give a different name or something, but it's not David Hasselhoff. So I can only hope that maybe after this they will do that. Because that would be great. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Because they even put movie references in the game where there's like this costume you can get. I think it's maybe a pre-order bonus where Patrick, he can glide with his pants and he's naked and you see his butt crack and it's got the little flag that says SpongeBob on it. It was like, hooray for SpongeBob, and he like crashes the celebration of the grand opening of the Krusty Krab 2, where SpongeBob thinks he's going to be the manager. Um, but yeah, why are they putting all these movie references? Like, is it just fan service, just to kind of throw a bone to the people who wanted a remake of the SpongeBob movie? Or maybe are they really gonna do it after this? I hope they do, but maybe not. But Purple Lamp Studio, they also did a really good job, I think, remaking Epic Mickey. I loved that. I'd never played Epic Mickey, but I always wanted to. Playing the remake, I don't feel like I missed anything. I feel like, this felt like to me like this would have been the definitive way to play it. Like, I don't feel like, oh, I should have played the Wii version instead. But I really, really enjoyed it. So I hope they remake Epic Mickey 2, Power of 2 or whatever. I've heard that game's not great. Just now saying it out loud, Power of 2, I only just realized the pun. That's like I guess like a math pun. Like if you raise something to the power of 2, the exponent or whatever. Um, but But yeah, I hope they remake that game because I really enjoyed the first one. And I'd like to play the second one, especially a better version that's not. I think I heard like Oswald's AI, if you're doing it one player, it's just like really, really bad, is one of the game's biggest problems I've heard. Um, but uh, but yeah, so Purple Lamp, do that next. Do Epic Mickey 2, and also do the SpongeBob movie game remake. That's going to be the most ridiculous name ever. SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie, the game, the remake. But I kind of love it though. I hope they call it that. Um, but um, but yeah, as far as this SpongeBob game, like I don't know, I'm really excited. I feel like they maybe are going to address some of the gripes that I had with the second game. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be harder or not than Cosmic Shake, but it does look more open. Some of those environments they showed look very big. Like they kind of pan the camera around, and it's like this doesn't necessarily seem like just like individual linear paths like it was in Battle for Bikini Bottom and in Cosmic Shake. It looks like there's actually more to do here potentially, and I love the concept. I love the theme where it's like because a long time ago they made they didn't remake the SpongeBob movie, but instead they're remaking Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. Not really, but Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was a game that the Flying Dutchman was the main antagonist. Came out in like 2001 or something like that. It came out not long before Battle for Bikini Bottom, but it was handled by a different company, and it's kind of universally panned as like a really, really crappy licensed game. I've never really played it myself, but from what I've seen and heard, yeah, it seems pretty bad. But they're kind of taking another crack at a game where the Flying Dutchman is the main enemy. He was in Battle for Bikini Bottom, and he was a boss that you fought in his graveyard. And I think he was maybe even a boss. There was like a Halloween level in Cosmic Shake as well. But this game really leans even heavier into that like dark, spooky. Like all the worlds seem to have kind of a dark sort of edge to them. That I don't know. I'm here for it. I like it, and I love how it seems like there might be two antagonists because in the song that David Hasselhoff's singing, that's like a parody of the Wellerman. He talks about like to beware the king and ghost or something like that. So the plot seems to be that the Flying Dutchman is maybe trying to usurp power over King Neptune as the ruler of Bikini Bottom. So they're like butting heads. But it doesn't really seem like King Neptune is necessarily a good guy either. In the show, it's kind of ambiguous because he's done some good things and he's also done some bad things. He's not necessarily like a benevolent ruler of the sea. He can like kind of abuse his power at times. Um, but but yeah, here it seems like they might both be enemies. So I'm really curious about the final boss. If it's like are they going to merge together and it's like the Flying Dutchman and King Neptune together? Or I don't know if they eventually work together. But on the box art, you can see like King Neptune's on one side and the Flying Dutchman's on the other side, and they're looking at each other angrily. So I love the Clash of Titans sort of thing that they're going with here. it makes me think. I feel like not enough games have that where it's like you have multiple different antagonists, but they're not necessarily working together. It's like a trifecta of like different groups with their own motivations. Like my favorite game of all time, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Bowser's in that game, and he's a bad guy, but he's not the main threat. He finds out somebody else kidnapped Princess Peach, so he's got his own side arc going on where he's like, "Hey, ain't nobody captures Peach but me." So like as Mario, you're fighting Sir Grotus and the X-Nauts, which is this one group of bad guys, but then Bowser's also out there doing his own thing. So you're fighting Bowser too, but Bowser's also fighting these other people. So I love that. So I'm here for it. If that's kind of what this game's going to be, I really like it, and I'm kind of not surprised because I think it was like Ant Dude posted like a month or so ago. He's like, I'm getting impatient. THQ, why haven't we seen more of this game? Because again, they teased it like well over a year ago. It was a long time ago at this point. And I think what it was is they were waiting. Nickelodeon probably made them wait because this game is very similar thematically to the new SpongeBob movie coming out. I forget what it's called, but it's got the Flying Dutchman, and he like takes SpongeBob to like the underworld, and they've got to get him back or something. I'm looking forward to that movie. I thought about doing a video talking about it, but I never did. After it comes out, I might maybe do a review or something of what I thought about the movie. But so I'm looking forward to that. So it's like it's kind of interesting because this game is not exactly a movie tie-in, but it kind of is. It's coming out like maybe a month before the movie comes out. It comes out in November, and then the movie comes out I think maybe on Christmas Day or something. I don't know why there's so many movies that come out during Christmas. Is that really a popular time to go to the movies? Like I've never once went to the movies on Christmas. You're spending time at home with your family, opening presents, and the roads are, depending on where you live, might be slick and snowy anyways, and not really ideal weather conditions to go out to a cinema. you know. Let me know in the comments if you go see a movie on Christmas. Um, but but yeah, they're very similar premises where they're both about the Flying Dutchman being kind of the main antagonist. I do hate how for the movie they're getting Mark Hamill because they wanted to have a big actor. And Mark Hamill, I mean, he does really good voice work. He's Fire Lord Ozai in Avatar. I love Avatar. Obviously, he was, Luke Skywalker or whatever. Not the biggest fan of him as a person, just kind of his political. I think a person's entitled. They can have whatever political views they want to have. I just don't like when you just hate the whole half of the population that feels differently from you and just, wish them nothing but pain and suffering. I think we should try to find common ground and, talk things out like reasonable adults. But, as far as being an actor goes, he's great and everything, perfectly fine. But the Flying Dutchman already has such a great iconic voice, and the actor, I don't know the name of the actor who does the Flying Dutchman, to be honest. But he's getting up in age. He's a pretty old guy, and I don't know how much longer he'll be around, so it feels kind of dirty to me to get somebody else like that. That could have been his movie. That could have been a big moment for him in his career. But it's like, no, we're going to get this other guy, even though we probably don't have very many more years with you left. Because, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, their voice actors have died. Some of the other SpongeBob voice actors, like Mrs. Puff, she's getting up in age. I hope these people live very, very long lives, But, I mean, they're already probably, like, pushing 80 or more. I don't know, some of these people. I don't know their exact ages, but I'm pretty sure that Mrs. Puff and also the guy who does the voice of the Flying Dutchman, he was like also Captain Knuckles on Flapjack and other different roles. He's been in a bunch of like Hallmark movies that my mom used to watch. But that was probably close to 10 years ago, and even then he had like stark white hair. Like he might be getting closer to 90. I have no idea how old he is, but he looks old. So it kind of sucks that they're getting somebody else to do the voice because he has such a great voice, and I don't know how long he's going to be around compared to like Mark Hamill, who's, well, I guess Mark Hamill's getting pretty up there too, but I don't know. But I don't know if they had the Flying Dutchman's voice in the game, but I hope it's the familiar Flying Dutchman that we're all familiar with. That would definitely soften the blow a little bit if we've got the regular icon. Because Mark Hamill, he would probably be kind of more expensive to get for like a licensed video game, so they would probably cheap out and be like, nah. But then again, they did get David Hasselhoff to the for the trailer for this new game, but I don't know what David Hasselhoff's doing these days. He's probably uh, maybe down on his fortune and wanted to make a little extra money and just taking what he could get. But either way, though, but I'm looking forward to the new SpongeBob game. It looks again like it's going to be maybe more open ended. I've got a strong feeling I'm going to like this game better than Cosmic Shake. I don't know if it'll dethrone Battle for Bikini Bottom, um, but I don't know. We'll see. It's still going to have the slide levels, which is always good. I love the slides. Honestly, I think Battle for Bikini Bottom does the slides better than Mario 64. Obviously, Mario 64 originated it, and a lot of other platformers have copied it. But usually the slides aren't as fun in those other games. But Battle for Bikini Bottom just being able to jump so fluidly, the way they kind of like tie platforming into it, it just feels so smooth and so good. And I really love because like when Mario jumps on a slide level, it feels a lot nerfed. It doesn't feel as good as his regular jump. He can't jump as well when he's sliding. But SpongeBob can still do a double jump. He can still do like crazy maneuvers while he's sliding down on his tongue. So I'm excited to see those back. And that's kind of the main reason I want a remake of the SpongeBob movie game because there's entire levels that are just ginormous, huge slides. I don't know if we'll see anything like that in this game. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about with the SpongeBob game. That might be pretty much it. There's still a lot that I guess we don't know. It seems like that they're skipping out on the Switch One version, which is kind of unfortunate that it's only coming to Switch 2 and then PS5 and Xbox Series X. Because I feel like they're probably missing out on their largest demographic. I feel like there's more people like kids who only have a Switch 1 who won't be getting a Switch 2 anytime soon. It's probably their biggest demographic. Then again, there's a lot of, I think, 20-something-year-old people like me who really want this game too. I think the trailer kind of catered to that with the fan service, like the movie references with David Hasselhoff and the mayonnaise. The mayonnaise meme, I mean, that episode's from like 2002 or something. So, the band geeks. So they know they have a broad audience. So maybe they're not too concerned about missing out on sales, but I do think it's a big missed opportunity to not get this game out on the Switch 2. I've got a good friend who she loves Battle for Bikini Bottom. She loves SpongeBob, and she's kind of disappointed that this game's not getting a Switch 2 version or Switch 1 version because she doesn't have a Switch 2 yet. But I don't know. That also does instill a little bit of confidence of like maybe this game really is just going to be a lot more open ended and exploratory and not necessarily like fully open world, but more sandboxy, which would really excite me. Because again, like I said at the start of this with Pac-Man, I think both can coexist with 3D platformers. The linear stuff, the more open-ended sandbox stuff, but Battle for Bikini Bottom and a lot of the other SpongeBob games are. I always felt like they wanted to be more of a collectathon, but just couldn't quite. It was like the developers would stop themselves short because they didn't feel like they could quite handle it. So it never felt like they maybe quite fully lived up to the potential that they could have. Honestly, if they do make a Pac-Man World 4, I do kind of hope maybe it's more sandbox because I feel the same way about that too. Like they want to do something more ambitious, and they kind of did with the third game, but it didn't fully work out. But if they have a chance to remake it and fix a lot of the problems and then learn from that and apply it to future games. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh yeah, one other big thing I want to talk about that is a bit of a point of concern for me. Like I said, I kind of hated the bosses in Cosmic Shake, and I'm a little worried about the boss fights in this new game. It seems like because they show a couple scenes where SpongeBob's fighting like a giant robotic Flying Dutchman, but it kind of seems like two different boss fights. I hope you're not just going to fight a bunch of like different robot Flying Dutchmen because that sounds kind of lame. If it's all like the same boss, just with like different attack patterns and stuff, like this one has 3 heads and this one has like whatever, because that was kind of the impression I got. One of them's kind of like a Jack in the Box where the Flying Dutchman head comes out and you attack it. And then the other one I think had like multiple heads that maybe spin around, maybe those are all just different phases of the same boss, or Maybe that's just an enemy. Maybe it's not even a boss. Maybe there's just robot Dutchman regular enemies you fight in the overworld. I don't know, but I hope the bosses don't all feel kind of copy and pasted because that'd be kind of lame and kind of disappointing. Um, but yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. Um, Really excited though. I know some people are kind of concerned about the launch year of Switch 2 and, not knowing, especially where Nintendo, and it is kind of disappointing that Nintendo had a partner showcase instead of a first party presentation. Because, like, we know Kirby Air Riders is supposed to come out this year. We've not seen any gameplay. We don't know when that Splatoon Raiders is coming out. Is that this year? Is that next year? Is that 2027? We don't know. Because I know Splatoon 3 they announced way ahead of time, and it was like 2 or 2.5 years before that game came out. Uh, Hyrule Warriors that actually showed up in this presentation as well. I forgot to talk about that, and that is kind of a first party thing. So we'll talk about that real quick before I wrap this up. Um, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. I don't have a ton to say about it. I will say that this is the first. I like this trailer better than the first one they showed. But I don't know if I'm in any hurry to pick up this game. I might get it eventually, but I'll be honest. I've said this before. I am so tired of the hero Link era, the champion Link era, I should say. He's always a hero of time, hero of whatever, hero of the winds. But the champion Link specifically, which is Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like they've milked that to death. I'm sick of the art style, the kind of cell shaded sort of look. Like it looks all right, but I kind of want them to go for the next game, especially since the Switch 2 has so much better, graphics and stuff, the technical specs to make it a little bit more realistic, kind of like Twilight Princess, go more in that direction, a little bit darker. Or even if they want to make a new Wind Waker game. Wind Waker doesn't have my favorite aesthetic, but, I played Chia a couple years ago, which is a game that's like heavily inspired by Wind Waker, and it's got a similar art style and just the leap in graphics, from the GameCube to now, like that game just has such beautiful lighting and like the sunset, seeing it off in the distance. So a new Wind Waker game that looked like that could be very pretty. I kind of prefer either of those polar opposite directions versus this art style that's kind of lukewarm, that's kind of in the middle. It's not bad. It looks better than Skyward Sword did, but I'm ready for something different. I think the champion version of Link looks so derpy. He's not expressive enough, and like all the Lunk memes that came from that A3 2016 trailer, I think it was. It just really emphasizes how kind of derpy Link looks in those games. I don't like the voice acting. I hate the champions, Daruk and Rivali and Mipha. Like they all feel so one note and generic, just archetypes. There's nothing likable at all about Rivali. He's just a jerk. Mipha is a Mary Sue character with no flaws who's just kind of annoying and is kind of like a stereotypical docile, submissive woman, basically, whose purpose is just to think, I will always be there to heal your wounds, Urbosa's probably the one with the most personality, and then you got Daruk, hey, little guy, and he's just your one note, just your big lug character. He's real strong, but he's a big softy. He's a gentle giant. It's just very by the books, just uninteresting, unrealistic characters. So I don't like the story in those games. People complain about the story in Tears of the Kingdom, but I probably liked it better than the story from the first one. I didn't like Breath of the Wild story either. Um, but what happened between Ganondorf and Queen Sonia, that was pretty shocking in Tears of the Kingdom, so I give it points for that. I was like, okay, that automatically elevates the story over the first game. But I'm tired of that map. Gosh dang it, they put a lot of work into it, and yeah, exploring Hyrule in Breath of the Wild was great the first time. I put like maybe 120 hours into Breath of the Wild, exploring the map, finding Korok seeds. It was great up until a point, but after probably the 40-hour mark, it got a little bit more repetitious, and I started to kind of maybe see through the cracks and kind of like the surprise was gone. Every time I opened a chest, I kind of knew like, oh, it's either going to have like some amber in it or it's going to have, uh, so it kind of got like finding a chest became less exciting when I realized that it was always the same few things that you find. The first divine beast, the elephant that you do, I thought was like awesome. I was like, this is the future of dungeons, being able to manipulate the parts. But then after that first one, the rest were kind of more underwhelming and kind of all looked the same. The shrines got very kind of repetitious. So by the time the DLC came out, I was just so done that I didn't even finish the DLC for Breath of the Wild. Because I bought the DLC, because if you remember, Nintendo announced they were doing DLC before the game even came out, and you could buy the DLC before Nintendo had even figured out. Kit and Krista have even said, yeah, we talked to Nintendo, what's the DLC going to be? And they're like, we don't know. We're charging people for it, but we don't know what it's going to be. So my hope was that the DLC was going to be like, obviously not a map the same size as Breath of the Wild's map, but maybe like a separate little smaller continent or something, a new area to explore. But the DLC kind of is just the same map. They just added extra dungeons, like extra shrines and extra other little stuff to do, and like an extra divine beast. So I didn't like that because I was already sick of that map. I wanted something different, but they just gave me more of that same map. Then they spend 7 years plus working on the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, and it comes out, and again it's the same map. And they added the depths to explore, which kind of like doubles the size of the map essentially. But the depths are so boring. There's nothing in there to find. It was kind of neat going to all the towers and lighting the way up and shooting the light bloom things with the arrows and seeing it light up. That was kind of cool. But there wasn't anything that interesting to do down there or to see. You could get the little pose, but like beyond that, and the Sky Islands too, a lot of them felt copied and pasted. So I wouldn't say that it was really worthwhile new content. The only thing you really found in the Sky Islands was like some shrines, and you would find some chests that would give you a map of like X marks the spot. So it was just chests telling you where to find chests in the depths. But then those chests in the depths were just costumes that you could get in the previous game by scanning amiibo. It wasn't anything new or surprising. It was just the same costumes with bad stats that you don't even want to equip because they're not good. And they charged 10 extra dollars, $70 instead of 60, and it was just the same game but kind of worse in my opinion. Sorry, that's probably going to trigger some people, but that's just my opinion. If you love the game, that's wonderful. I'm very happy for you, but for me personally, I was very underwhelmed. I don't know why it spent so many years in development, but and I wasn't a big fan of the Zonai crafting stuff. So I loved Breath of the Wild. I thought it was fantastic. First 40 hours, it was like a 10 out of 10. One of, if not the best game I ever played. Then after that, it got a little bit more tedious and repetitive. Then by the time the DLC came out, I was kind of sick of that world map and I wanted something different. And the DLC didn't deliver on that front, so I never finished the DLC. And then my little nephew was born, and he got super into Breath of the Wild for a good couple years, and I put in probably an extra 200 hours into the game playing it with him. That's not Nintendo's fault, but that made me even more tired of this world that I was already tired of. But it made my nephew happy, so that makes me happy. But I was like, oh, it's like having too much of your favorite food. Like, I'm going to throw up if I ate any more of this birthday cake ice cream. I loved it, but now I can never look at it the same way again because I got sick that one time eating so much of it, That's the Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. And then Tears of the Kingdom just further exacerbated that problem. And then they did the one Hyrule Warriors game, and now a second one, and it's like, I'm so tired of reusing this map. I want something new. I want something different. So yeah, just being completely honest, I'm not really excited for Age of Imprisonment. Again, this second trailer, it looked kind of better than the first one. And Nintendo said the story is like canon, so maybe they're going to do something interesting. But again, I don't love the voice acting in these games. I think it feels forced and corny. I feel like Nintendo's kind of skimping out on the budget of hiring like an actual really, really professional actor. Either that or just whoever it is at Nintendo that's like directing, like the voice director just isn't giving good voice direction, or they're doing all these in like one or two takes and calling it a day. I don't know. Like Kid Icarus Uprising on 3DS, which that was a Sakurai game, and he holds himself to a very high standard. They got top notch voice actors, and they did just a banger job on the voice acting. But no other Nintendo game has come even close, and it's so frustrating. Which I don't really play um, Fire Emblem or Xenoblade. Those games maybe do. Um, but a lot of Nintendo's other games, it's like the voice acting just feels so corny, and it's like, why can't we just put a little bit more into making it good? So, yeah. But that's enough ranting about that. I hate to kind of end this on a negative because I really am so excited for Pac-Man World 2 Repack and for SpongeBob and for the Katamari game and to a lesser extent Monster Hunter, but I've got a lot else on my plate, so I can't really think too much about it because I still have to beat the first two games. But I think that game looks really good, and I'm sure will be high quality. Um, but uh, but yeah, and the Hyrule Warrior games are a fun time. I like the Dynasty Warrior hack and slash gameplay. It's a little mindless. Um, Part of what upsets me about it too, though, is because like I think it's time to try a different franchise. To me, the best Warriors games are the ones that aren't themed around one specific game, like they did the Fire Emblem Three Hopes or whatever that was based on all the characters and stuff from Three Houses. Personally, my favorite, I loved the original Hyrule Warriors, where it was just a big crossover. It was like Smash Brothers, but for only Zelda characters, where you could play as Tetra, you could play as Midna. You know, you could have all these different characters from different incarnations interacting with each other. You could get all these different skins for Link to unlock. That was, this one makes him look like Twilight Princess, and this one makes him look like Skyward Sword or Ocarina of Time. Just all this fun fan service, and like this level is based around the Forsaken Fortress from Wind Waker, and this level is based on just Hyrule Field from Twilight Princess. This level is based on, the volcano from Ocarina of Time, the Death Mountain, and this one's based on Zora's Domain from Ocarina of Time. Just that convergence of just all these different games into one with all these playable characters. So yeah, I think they've kind of done enough with Zelda at this point. I kind of want them to move on to a different franchise. And they've done Fire Emblem. Um, I want them to do. They could do a Mushroom Kingdom Warriors, bring in a whole bunch of obscure Mario characters from across the games. Have a Mario Galaxy level and a Sunshine level where you're running around beating up Koopas or whatever in Delfino Plaza, or then this level's in Bob-on Battlefield. Like all the different games. This one is based on a planet in Mario Galaxy, or do a Kirby Star Warriors where you can play as Kirby, or you can play as of course, King Dedede and Meta Knight and Waddle Dee, Bandana Waddle Dee or whatever. But then you can also be Meta Knight, or you can be Galacta Knight, and you can be Marks, and like all these different enemies throughout the series history. You can be Taranza, or you can be Queen Sectonia from Triple Deluxe. You can be Magalore. I think that could be a lot of fun, but I think they've milked Zelda enough, and if they're going to make another Zelda one, I'd rather it be all these characters from all the different series. It doesn't have to be canon, just like not tied to this one specific game. I think that's a little boring, but that's just me. But anyway, in the words of Alex from Nintendo Life, that's more than enough waffling. I think we've pretty much said everything that there is to be said. So thank you so very much for listening to this podcast. I'm trying to think. I'm probably missing something else from that Nintendo Direct. Oh, there was this game. I think it's called Hella, which I kind of feel weird saying it because I feel like I'm swearing. But that game looked hecka good. So maybe I'll pick that up. I guess that was a game that was already announced coming to like PlayStation and stuff, but that was my first time seeing it. I don't know if it's going to be like an open world game or what, but it's like you explore and you're a mouse in this kind of big, beautiful, realistic area, and you can like go inside of like houses and buildings and like the garage and outside, and you can for some reason latch onto a moose and swing around from his antlers. And it's got online co-op with up to like 4 people, I think. I'll definitely be keeping my eyes on that one. That one looked pretty cool. I might not get it, but I thought that was interesting. I was like, that's a big fat maybe. So yeah, I'm glad I thought of that game to throw that in. And there may have been other stuff in there worth talking about, but that's all that's really coming to mind. So if I forgot something, sorry. It's probably not something I cared about though. Uh, but oh, they had like a little sizzle reel showing like Shinobi. I never played those on the. I, I played on the Sega Genesis like Switch Online app. I played a little bit of like the first Shinobi. I thought it was pretty fun. I was shocked. I actually liked that game quite a bit. I think it's cool that Sega's bringing back a lot of their old IP. So this might be one I pick up. I'll keep my eye on it. I like. I don't know if it's a Metroidvania. Again, I don't. Excuse me. I don't love Metroidvanias if that's what it is. But I like the art style. It's like 2D hand drawn, but it's got like an Oriental sort of vibe to it. I think that looks pretty cool. They showed like a Hello Kitty Island Adventure DLC or something. I've heard apparently that game's shockingly good, but probably not one I'm gonna pick up. Um, but yeah, that's probably about everything that was in the direct. I'm gonna stop talking now. Hopefully we get a first party direct sooner rather than later. Nintendo's never done one in August before. Maybe they'll surprise us, but probably it'll be sometime in September at this point. But even though there's a lot of games we don't have release dates for first party wise, and it's a little iffy, like, is Metroid Prime 4 coming this year? Is Kirby Air Riders coming this year? Is that Splatoon game coming this year? We don't know. Um, I think I've got a lot to play that'll have me pretty content with between Pac-Man and SpongeBob and whatever else, that Kirby DLC that's supposed to be coming out in August. So yeah, I got stuff to play. I'm good. But yeah, with all that said, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.